Do you believe one wrong text could change everything? Lena Vire didn't, until she accidentally sent a private fantasy message to the most brutal Alpha King in the territories. Now she has 1 hour to reach the palace or face execution. What happens next will shock you. Stay until the end to see how a scrubbing floor Omega becomes the queen who rewrites an entire kingdom. Like and comment what city you're watching from. The stone floor was cold enough to crack skin. Lena Vire had been on her knees for 3 hours, scrubbing the same hallway she'd scrubbed yesterday, and the day before that, and every miserable day for the past 4 years. Her fingers were raw, knuckles split open where the lye soap had eaten through what little protection her Omega healing could offer, which wasn't much. Omegas like her, rankless, packless, powerless, healed slower than everyone else, bled easier, broke faster. The Ironwood Pack didn't care. You missed a spot. Lena didn't look up. She knew that voice, Beta Carrick, the Overseer's favorite enforcer, a man who got off on making Omegas flinch. She kept scrubbing, kept her head down, kept breathing through her mouth so she wouldn't have to smell the rancid satisfaction rolling off him in waves. I said you missed a spot, Omega. His boot came down on her hand, not hard enough to break bones. That would have required paperwork, just hard enough to grind her already raw knuckles into the stone, to make her gasp, to remind her exactly where she stood in the hierarchy of this pack, which was nowhere. Below the dirt she was cleaning. Yes, Beta, Lena whispered. I'll fix it. He lifted his boot, walked away laughing. She didn't cry. She'd stopped crying 2 years ago, right around the time she'd realized tears didn't change anything. They just gave people like Carrick more satisfaction. So she swallowed the pain, dunked her brush back in the bucket, and kept scrubbing. This was survival. Head down, mouth shut, invisible. It was the only strategy that worked. The Ironwood Pack sat on the edge of the Northern Territories, a frontier settlement that prided itself on strength, dominance, and brutal efficiency. It was a pack built by alphas, for alphas, and everyone else existed to serve. Betas got the decent jobs. Guards, administrators, enforcers. Omegas got the rest. The cleaning, the cooking, the manual labor nobody else wanted. And if you were an Omega without a pack bond, without family, without anyone to claim you, you got Lena's life. She'd arrived here 4 years ago after her birth pack dissolved. A polite word for fell apart when the alpha died and everyone scattered like rats. She'd been 17, alone, and stupid enough to think another pack might take her in out of kindness. The Ironwood Pack had taken her in, all right, as property. She slept in a shared barracks with 9 other rankless Omegas, worked 14-hour days, ate whatever scraps the kitchens didn't want, and lived under a simple set of rules. Obey, stay silent, and don't cause problems. Lena had followed those rules perfectly. Until today. She finished the hallway just before sunset, dragged her bucket and brush back to the storage closet, and collapsed onto her bunk in the barracks. Her hands were shaking. They always shook after a shift, a combination of exhaustion and malnutrition, and the constant low-grade fear that sat in her chest like a stone. The barracks were empty. Everyone else was still working. Lena pulled out the one thing she owned that wasn't pack-issued, a battered old smartphone with a cracked screen held together with tape and sheer stubbornness. It didn't have data. Omegas weren't allowed network access, but it still worked on the barracks' ancient Wi-Fi, which meant she could message her one friend in the world. Mira. They'd met online 2 years ago in a support forum for displaced Omegas. Mira lived 3 territories over, worked in a slightly less horrible pack, and was the only person Lena could talk to without fear. They messaged every night. Stupid stuff, mostly. Jokes about their terrible lives, fantasies about escape, fantasies about revenge. Lena opened the app, wincing as her split knuckles protested, and started typing. Lena, you won't believe what Carrick did today. Lena stepped on my hand while I was scrubbing. Lena, I swear, Mira, one day I'm going to tell him exactly what I think of him. Lena, gonna march right up to Alpha Gareth and report every single thing he's done. Lena, or better yet, Lena, I'll send a message straight to the Alpha King himself. Lena, Dear Kale Draven, you don't know me, but I'm an Omega getting crushed by your broken system, and I think you're a coward for letting it happen. She laughed as she typed it. A bitter, exhausted sound. Like she'd ever have the guts to actually send something like that. Like the Alpha King would ever read a message from someone like her. Kyle Draven. Even thinking his name made her pulse spike with a confusing mix of fear and something else she didn't want to examine. Everyone knew who he was. The youngest Alpha King in territorial history, ruthless, calculating, powerful enough to crush entire packs with a single command. He ruled the territories from the Obsidian Palace, a fortress in the Central Lands that most Omegas would never see. He was a legend, a nightmare, a king who didn't care about people like her. Lena kept typing, letting the fantasy unspool. Lena. I'd tell him everything. Lena. How they work us till we break Lena. How betas like Carrick get away with whatever they want. Lena. How the system protects alphas and destroys everyone else. Lena. I'd make him listen. Lena. And then maybe, something would actually change. She hit send, felt slightly better. Fantasies were free, at least. She set the phone down, closed her eyes, and tried to ignore the throbbing in her hands. Her whole body ached, shoulders, back, knees. Everything hurt in that dull, persistent way that meant it would hurt worse tomorrow. 4 years of this, and her body was already breaking down. She was 21 and felt 50. How much longer could she keep doing this? The thought came unbidden, unwelcome. Lena pushed it away. Thinking about the future was dangerous. The future was just more of the same, stretching out endlessly until her body gave out, or she made a mistake bad enough to get herself killed. Better to focus on surviving today, then tomorrow, then the day after that, one floor at a time. The phone buzzed. Lena frowned. Mira usually took at least 10 minutes to respond. She worked late shifts too. But when Lena picked up the phone, her stomach dropped straight through the floor. The message hadn't gone to Mira. It had gone to a contact labeled Alpha King, Official Territories Channel. No. No. Lena's hands went numb. The phone almost slipped from her grip. She stared at the screen, at the little delivered checkmark beneath her message, and felt her entire world tilt sideways. This wasn't possible. She didn't have the Alpha King in her contacts. She didn't have anyone in her contacts except Mira and the pack's emergency line. Except, oh no, last month. The mandatory pack-wide update. Every Omega had been required to install the new Territories Communications System, a government app that connected all packs to the central administration. Lena had installed it, ignored it, and forgotten it existed. Apparently it had automatically populated her contacts, including a direct line to the Alpha King's office, and she'd just sent him 8 messages calling him a coward who let Omegas get crushed. Lena couldn't breathe. The barracks suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. Her vision tunneled. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, a frantic drumming that drowned out everything else. This was it. This was how she died. Not from exhaustion or starvation or one of Carrick's accidents, but from her own stupid inability to check who she was texting. She should delete the messages. Her fingers fumbled across the screen trying to find the delete option, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She found it, pressed it. Error. Messages sent to official channels cannot be deleted. Of course they couldn't. A sound escaped her throat, half laugh, half sob. Of course. Of course, the one time she needed technology to work in her favor. It didn't. Lena dropped the phone like it had burned her, pressed her hands over her mouth, tried to think through the panic flooding her system. Okay. Maybe no one would see it. Maybe the Alpha King got thousands of messages a day, and hers would just disappear into the noise. Maybe whoever monitored that channel would see it was from some nobody Omega and just delete it without bothering to escalate it. Maybe... The phone buzzed again. Lena's whole body went cold. She didn't want to look, didn't want to know, wanted to throw the phone across the room and pretend this wasn't happening, but her hand reached for it anyway, picked it up, looked at the screen. Alpha King. Official response, Lena Vire. Ironwood Pack. Omega. Age 21. No rank. No bond. No family. Alpha King. Official response. Interesting message. Alpha King. Official response. You have 1 hour to present yourself at the Obsidian Palace. Alpha King. Official response. Fail to comply, and you will be judged in absentia. Alpha King. Official response. The penalty for treason is death. Lena's vision went white at the edges. 1 hour. The Obsidian Palace was 3 hours away by transport. She was already dead. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattered onto the bunk. Lena stared at it, at those 5 messages that had just sealed her fate, and felt something inside her crack. Not break, not shatter, just crack. Like ice under pressure. She'd spent 4 years being careful. 4 years following every rule, swallowing every humiliation, making herself small and invisible so she could survive. And it hadn't mattered. She was going to die anyway. The barracks door banged open. 3 Omegas filed in, exhausted and filthy from their shifts. They saw Lena sitting on her bunk, staring at nothing. And Senna, a older Omega with graying hair and kind eyes, frowned. Lena, you okay? Lena looked up at her. I just committed treason, she heard herself say. The word sounded absurd, impossible, like something from a story, not real life. Senna's frown deepened. What? I accidentally sent a message to the Alpha King, Lena continued in that same flat, distant voice. Called him a coward. He summoned me to the palace. I have 1 hour. It's a 3-hour drive. Silence. Then Mari, the youngest Omega, laughed nervously. You're joking, right? Lena held up her phone, showed them the messages. The laughter died. Oh shit, Mari whispered. Oh shit is right, Senna said, her face pale. Lena, you need to run, right now. Grab whatever you can carry and… He already knows who I am, Lena interrupted. He listed my name, my pack, everything. If I run, he'll come here looking for me. Then hide. We'll say we don't know where you went. And when he doesn't believe you? Lena asked quietly. When he decides the whole pack must have helped me escape? What happens to you then? Senna's mouth snapped shut. They all knew what happened. The Alpha King didn't make idle threats. If he said the penalty for treason was death, he meant it. And if he thought the Ironwood pack had harbored a traitor, he'd burn it to the ground. I have to go, Lena said. That's suicide, Mari protested. So is staying. At least if you stay, there's a chance. There's no chance, Lena cut her off. Either I go and he kills me, or I don't go and he kills all of us. Those are the options. She stood up. Her legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. She walked to the small locker at the foot of her bunk, pulled out her only other set of clothes, slightly less stained than what she was wearing, and started changing. The other Omegas watched in stunned silence. You're really doing this, Senna said softly. Yeah. Why? Lena paused, her hands stilling on the buttons of her shirt. Because I'm tired, she said finally. I'm tired of being afraid, tired of keeping my head down, tired of scrubbing floors for people who think I'm less than dirt. And if I'm going to die anyway… She looked at Senna, at Mari, at the other Omegas who'd become her family over 4 years of shared misery. At least I'll die standing up. Oh, she didn't remember walking out of the barracks, didn't remember crossing the compound, past the shocked stares of the other Omegas and Betas who'd somehow already heard what was happening. News traveled fast in the pack, especially bad news. She didn't remember anything until she was standing outside Alpha Gareth's office, her hand raised to knock. This was insane. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the wilderness and take her chances with rogues and starvation instead of certain execution. But something in those messages had hooked into her chest and wouldn't let go. You will be judged in absentia. He was going to kill her either way. At least if she went, she'd get to look him in the eye first. At least if she went, she could say what she really thought before she died. At least… Lena knocked. Enter. The word was sharp, impatient. Lena pushed open the door. Alpha Gareth sat behind his massive desk, a mountain of a man with iron-gray hair and the kind of presence that made rooms feel smaller. He was reading something on his tablet, didn't look up. You're not scheduled for… He glanced up, saw her, and his expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. Omega, what are you doing here? You should be… I need emergency transport to the Obsidian Palace, Lena interrupted. The words came out steadier than she'd expected. Stronger. Gareth stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Excuse me? I've been summoned by the Alpha King, Lena said, lifting her chin. I have 53 minutes to comply or I'll be executed for treason. She pulled out her phone, held it up so he could see the messages. Gareth's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: disbelief, shock, calculation, and finally something that looked almost like fear. He stood up so fast his chair scraped back against the floor. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "I sent him a message," Lena said flatly. "By accident." "What kind of message?" "The kind that called him a coward." The silence that followed was so complete Lena could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the distant sounds of the pack outside. People going about their evening routines, completely unaware that their world was about to change. Then Gareth started laughing, not cruel laughter, not mocking, just stunned, disbelieving laughter from a man who couldn't process what he was hearing. "You're serious," he finally said, still half laughing. "You actually—" "Yes." The laughter cut off abruptly. Gareth slammed his hand down on the desk, hard enough to make his coffee mug jump. "You stupid, suicidal little—" He cut himself off, dragged both hands through his hair, started pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The Alpha King doesn't summon Omegas to have a conversation. He summons them to make examples, public, brutal, examples. I know. Then why are you in my office asking for transport?" His voice rose. "Run! Disappear into the wilderness. I'll report you as missing and—" "He already knows who I am," Lena said quietly, but her voice cut through his panic like a knife. "He listed my name, my pack, my age, the fact that I'm unbonded and rankless. He knows everything. If I run, he'll come here looking for me. And when he doesn't find me—" She let the sentence hang. Gareth stopped pacing. His face had gone pale. Lena watched him do the math. Watched him weigh the value of one rankless Omega against the safety of his entire pack. It wasn't a hard calculation. "If I go," Lena continued softly, "maybe he just kills me and leaves you alone. Maybe this stays between him and me, but if I run—" "He'll assume the pack helped you," Gareth finished, his voice hollow. "He'll come here, and he won't leave until someone pays." "Yeah." "Fuck." Gareth sat down heavily in his chair, looking suddenly older, tired. "This is— fuck." He grabbed his phone, stared at it for a moment, then made a call. "Carrick, prep the emergency transport, now." A pause. "I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're in the middle of dinner. Get the transport ready for a run to the Central Lands. We have 45 minutes. Another pause. "Because if we don't, the Alpha King is going to turn this pack into a cautionary tale." He hung up, looked at Lena. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You know he's going to kill you," Gareth said finally. "Yes." "You know there's no coming back from this." "Yes." "Then why?" He leaned forward, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked at her like she was a person instead of a resource. "Why not run? Why not try to survive?" Lena thought about that. Really thought about it. She thought about 4 years of scrubbing floors, 4 years of Carrick's boot on her hand and worse. 4 years of watching Omegas get broken down until they forgot they were people. She thought about the fantasy message she'd meant to send to Mira, about how good it had felt to type those words, even if she'd never planned to mean them. "I think you're a coward for letting it happen." "Because I'm already dead," she said quietly. "I've been dead for 4 years. Every day in this pack kills me a little more. At least this way." She met his eyes. "At least this way, I get to die saying something true." Gareth looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite respect, but close. Recognition, maybe. Of the fact that she'd already made her choice and nothing he said would change it. "You have 42 minutes, he said finally. "The transport will get you there in 35 if Carrick breaks every speed limit and doesn't get stopped. You'll have 7 minutes to present yourself." "That's cutting it close. It's the best I can do." He stood up, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of something amber and 2 glasses, poured 2 fingers in each, slid one across the desk to her. Lena stared at it. "Drink," Gareth said. "You're about to walk into the palace of the most powerful alpha in the territories who wants you dead. You could use the courage." She picked up the glass. The liquor burned going down, settled warm and uncomfortable in her empty stomach. She wasn't used to alcohol. Omegas didn't get alcohol, but she wasn't acting like an Omega anymore, was she? Gareth drained his own glass, set it down carefully. For what it's worth, he said, not looking at her, you're right. The system is broken. But calling the man who controls that system a coward isn't brave, Omega. It's suicide. I know, Lena said. Then why do it? She thought about that. Really thought about it. Because someone had to, she said finally. Because I've spent my whole life watching people get crushed and no one says anything. No one does anything. Everyone just accepts it, and I'm tired of accepting it. She set down her glass. I'm tired of being quiet. Gareth looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the door, opened it, and gestured for her to follow. Come on, he said. Transport's ready. And Omega? She paused in the doorway. Yes? Don't make me regret helping you. Lena almost laughed. Pretty sure we're both going to regret this. Yeah, Gareth agreed. Probably. The transport was a stripped-down military vehicle that smelled like diesel and fear and gun oil. Carrick was already in the driver's seat, his face grim. He looked at Lena climbing in and shook his head. You're insane, he said. So I've heard. He didn't respond, just started the engine and pulled out of the compound so fast the tires kicked up gravel. Lena strapped herself into the back seat and watched the ironwood pack disappear behind them. The barracks where she'd slept for 4 years. The kitchens where she'd peeled 1,000,000 potatoes. The hallways she'd scrubbed until her hands bled. She'd hated every inch of this place, but it had been home. Now she was leaving it forever, either because she was about to die, or because, well, she didn't let herself think about the or. That way led to hope, and hope was dangerous. Carrick drove like he was trying to break land speed records, taking corners fast enough to slam Lena against the restraints, not speaking, both hands white-knuckled on the wheel. The transport shook and rattled over the rough frontier roads. Lena watched the territories blur past through the window. 35 minutes. That's all she had left. 35 minutes of life, and then she'd stand in front of the Alpha King and what? Die, probably. Publicly. Brutally. As an example. But before that happened, she'd get to say her piece. She'd get to look Kael Draven in the eye and tell him exactly what she thought of his broken system. She'd get to die with her head up instead of bowed. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. She should have been terrified, should have been crying, begging, planning some desperate escape, but instead she felt calm, clear, like something that had been wound tight inside her for years had finally snapped, and now she was just free to fall. She pulled out her phone, opened her messages with Mira. Lena. I messed up, Lena. Sent my fantasy message to the actual Alpha King. Lena. He summoned me to the palace. Lena. I'm going. Lena. If I don't message you again, thanks for being my friend. Lena. It meant everything. She sent it, set the phone down, stared out the window at the darkening sky. Carrick glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His expression was unreadable. You really called the Alpha King a coward? He asked after a long silence. Yes. Huh. He took another corner too fast, the transport tilting dangerously. Didn't think you had it in you. Neither did I. They drove in silence for a while. Lena watched the landscape change as they moved from the northern territories toward the central lands. The rough frontier gave way to smoother roads, more settlements, signs of civilization. They passed other vehicles, rare out here, but more common the closer they got to the palace. Every mile brought her closer to death. Every mile she felt lighter. For what it's worth, Carrick said eventually, his voice gruff. That thing I did with your hand earlier, stepping on it while you scrubbed. That was shitty. Lena blinked. An apology from Carrick. She really was living in her last moments. The universe was throwing her all sorts of surprises today. Yeah, she said. It was. He trailed off, cleared his throat. Orders, you know. Gareth wants the Omegas kept in line, and I do what I'm told. You could have said no. Could I? He glanced at her again in the mirror. Could you have said no when they told you to scrub that floor for the 1,000th time? Lena thought about that, about the difference between not having a choice and not making one. I said no today, she pointed out. Carrick's jaw tightened. Yeah, look where that got you. Maybe where I got is better than where I was. He didn't have an answer for that. They drove faster. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Lena watched the colors bleed across the horizon and thought it looked like fire, like the whole world was burning. Maybe it was. Maybe that's what happened when you stopped being quiet. You scared? Carrick asked, breaking another long silence. Lena thought about it, really examined what she was feeling. Fear. Yes. Her hands were shaking, her heart was racing. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to hide, to do anything except drive toward certain death. But underneath the fear was something else, something harder, sharper. No, she said, surprised to find it true. I'm angry. At the king? At everything. She leaned her head back against the seat. At the system. At people like you who enforce it. At people like me who let it happen. At 4 years of swallowing shit because I thought that's what survival looked like. Survival does look like that, Carrick said quietly. For people like us. Then maybe survival isn't enough, Lena replied. He didn't answer, just pressed the accelerator harder. They were moving into the central lands now. The roads were smooth, well-maintained. Streetlights appeared. Buildings grew taller, more sophisticated. Signs of wealth and power everywhere. This was where the alphas lived. The ruling class, the ones who made the laws that crushed people like her. Lena had never been here before, had never thought she'd see it. She stared out the window, memorizing everything, storing it up. If these were her last moments, she wanted to remember them, wanted to hold on to this feeling of clarity, of purpose, of finally doing something instead of just surviving. The obsidian palace rose from the central lands like a blade of black glass, all sharp angles and impossible height. It looked like something designed to intimidate, to remind everyone who approached exactly how small and powerless they were. Lena stared up at it through the transport window and felt nothing but that same cold clarity. She was going to die in there. But she was going to do it standing up. Carrick pulled up to the main gates, where 2 guards in formal armor immediately stepped forward. He rolled down the window, showed credentials, explained the situation in terse sentences. The guards' expressions went from bored to shocked when they heard why they were there, when they saw Lena in the back. The Omega who... Yeah, Carrick said. She actually came? Apparently she's insane. One of the guards opened Lena's door. He wasn't rough about it, but his face was carefully blank, like he was trying not to look at a dead woman walking. Out, he said, not unkindly. You've got 8 minutes. Lena climbed out on shaking legs. The night air was cold against her skin. She could smell flowers, actual flowers, not the industrial cleaners she was used to. Could hear water somewhere, a fountain maybe. It was beautiful here. Of course it was. The powerful always got the beautiful things. Carrick didn't get out of the transport, didn't look at her, just sat there with his hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Good luck, he muttered. It was probably the kindest thing he'd ever said to her. Lena wanted to thank him, wanted to say something profound, something memorable. But her throat was tight and the words wouldn't come. So she just nodded. Then Carrick drove away and Lena was alone at the gates of the Obsidian Palace with 8 minutes before her execution. The guard gestured toward the entrance. Main hall, straight through. Don't make him wait. What happens if I do? Lena asked. The guard's expression flickered. Nothing good. Can't be worse than what's already going to happen. You'd be surprised. He paused. Look, just walk fast, keep your head up, don't talk to anyone. And when you get to the throne room, show respect. He doesn't like groveling, but he expects courtesy. Why are you telling me this? The guard shrugged uncomfortably. Because you showed up. Most people in your position would have run. That takes guts, stupid guts, but still. He opened the gate. Go. Lena walked. The palace interior was as cold and sharp as the exterior, all black stone and silver fixtures, minimalist and brutal. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floors. Servants and officials stopped to stare as she passed, this bedraggled Omega in stained work clothes tracking dirt across their pristine surfaces. Let them stare. She was done being invisible. A few of them whispered. She caught fragments. The one who... actually came, brave or stupid, dead either way. Lena kept walking. The hallway seemed to stretch forever, past doorways that led to rooms she'd never see, past windows that looked out over manicured gardens she'd never walk through, past artwork and tapestries that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. This was power. This was what it looked like when you had everything. And in a few minutes, the man who owned all of this was going to kill her. The hallway opened into the main hall. Lena stopped. She couldn't help it. The space was massive, vaulted ceilings that seemed to stretch up forever, black stone walls inlaid with silver, and at the far end, elevated on a dais, a throne. Not a metaphorical throne, not a fancy chair someone called a throne. An actual throne, carved from pure obsidian, radiating power even from 100 feet away. And sitting on it, perfectly still, watching her with eyes like frozen mercury, was Kyle Draven, the Alpha King. Lena had seen pictures. Everyone had seen pictures. Every official proclamation, every news broadcast, every piece of territorial propaganda featured his face. But pictures didn't capture this. Didn't capture the sheer presence of him, the way the air itself seemed to bend around him, the weight of dominance that pressed down like a physical force. Even from this distance, she could feel it, could feel her Omega instinct screaming at her to submit, to kneel, to bow her head and beg for mercy. She locked her knees and started walking. Each step echoed. Each step brought her closer to the man who held her life in his hands. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her approach with an expression that gave away nothing. Lena counted her heartbeats, tried to keep her breathing steady, tried to remember all the things she wanted to say before she died. She stopped 10 feet from the throne. The silence stretched. Up close, Kyle Draven was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 30, though it was hard to tell. He had the kind of face that could be any age. Sharp features, strong jaw, dark hair cut short and severe. He wore black, formal but not ornate, and he sat completely still as he studied her, like a predator deciding whether prey was worth the energy to kill. "Closer," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, more dangerous than shouting. Lena stepped forward. 5 feet now. Close enough to see the silver threading through his dark eyes. Close enough to smell cedar and winter and something uniquely alpha that made her Omega instincts scream. Close enough to die. "Kneel," Kale said. The command hit her like a physical force. Alpha commands were built into Omega biology, nearly impossible to resist. Her knees wanted to buckle, her body wanted to obey. Every cell screamed at her to submit. Lena thought about 4 years on her knees. 4 years scrubbing floors, 4 years with her head down and her mouth shut. She thought about dying on her knees versus dying on her feet. "No," she said. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. The word echoed in the vast throne room like a stone dropped into still water. Kale Draven's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or the kind of interest a scientist shows when a lab specimen does something unexpected. "No?" he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "You're going to kill me anyway," Lena said. Her voice was shaking now, but she kept going, kept her eyes locked on his. "So no, I'm not kneeling, I'm not begging. If I'm dying today, I'm doing it on my feet." The silence that followed was suffocating. Lena could feel the weight of every eye in the hall on her back. Servants, guards, advisors, all of them frozen in shock at what she'd just done. At what she was still doing, standing, meeting the Alpha King's gaze, refusing a direct command. It was suicide. But she was already dead, wasn't she? Kyle stood slowly, deliberately, unfolding from the throne with the kind of controlled grace that made Lena's survival instincts scream. He was taller than she'd expected, had to be 6'3", 6'4", all lean muscle and coiled power. He descended the steps of the dais one at a time, each footfall deliberate, until he was standing directly in front of her. This close, she could feel his dominance like heat. Could smell cedar in winter and something uniquely alpha that made her Omega biology shriek at her to submit, to bow, to show her throat. She locked her knees and held her ground. Kale studied her face like he was reading a book written in a language he didn't quite understand. His eyes, silver with fragments of darker gray, tracked across her features. The bruise on her cheekbone from where she'd slipped on wet floors last week. The split in her bottom lip that hadn't healed right. The hollows under her eyes from too many nights of not enough sleep. 4 years of the Ironwood Pack written on her skin. "You called me a coward," he said quietly. "Yes. You said I let Omegas get crushed." "You do. You think I'm responsible for what happens in every pack across the territories?" "You're the Alpha King," Lena said, and her voice was steadier now, clearer, like something inside her had finally stopped trying to hold back. "If you're not responsible, who is?" His eyes narrowed. "Careful, Omega." "My name is Lena." "I know your name." "Then use it." The air between them crackled with tension. Lena could feel her heart slamming against her ribs, could feel the fear she'd been holding back trying to claw its way up her throat. But she didn't look away, didn't step back. She'd come here to die. Might as well make it mean something. Kale tilted his head slightly, like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone begging for mercy." "Would it change anything if I did?" "No." "Then why waste the breath?" Something that might have been amusement crossed his face, gone in an instant, but Lena saw it. Saw the crack in his armor, just for a second. "Do you know what the penalty for treason is?" he asked. "You already told me. Death." "Public execution," Kyle clarified, his voice flat. "Displayed in the central square as an example to anyone else who might think about insulting the crown. Slow, painful, final." Lena's stomach turned over, but she didn't let it show on her face. "Fine." "Fine?" "I meant what I said in those messages," Lena said, and her voice was steady now. Rock solid. "The system is broken. It crushes people like me while protecting people like you. And if dying is what it takes to make you hear that, actually hear it, even for a second, then fine. Kill me. But at least I'll die knowing I told the truth." Kale stared at her. Then he did something Lena never expected. He laughed. Not cruel, not mocking, just genuinely surprised. Like she'd told a joke he hadn't seen coming. "You really believe that?" he said, the laughter fading into something darker. "You actually think your death would change anything?" "No," Lena admitted. The honesty tasted bitter. "Probably not, but it's better than living on my knees." The amusement vanished completely. Kale's expression went cold again, calculating, and he started circling her slowly, like a predator evaluating prey, deciding where to bite first. Lena forced herself not to turn, not to track his movement, forced herself to stand still while every instinct screamed at her to run. "Tell me something, Lena Vire," Kyle said from behind her, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "If I offered you a choice, return to the Ironwood Pack and continue your life exactly as it was, or stay here and help me burn the entire system to the ground, which would you choose?" Lena's breath caught. "What?" Kyle completed his circle, came back to stand in front of her. "It's a simple question." "That's not—" She shook her head, trying to clear it, trying to make sense of words that didn't fit together. "You're not offering me a choice. You're executing me for treason." "I was," Kyle said. His eyes were unreadable. "But you've made me curious." He stopped circling, stood directly in front of her again. "I've been Alpha King for 5 years," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "More dangerous. 5 years of fighting a council that resists every reform. 5 years of watching a system built by alphas who don't want change. 5 years of trying to fix something from inside a structure designed to stay broken." He paused. "I've tried legislation, negotiation, incremental progress." His jaw tightened. "It's not working. The system is too entrenched. Too many people benefit from keeping it exactly as it is. So I've been looking for a different approach, something that would force change instead of asking for it." "What does that have to do with me?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle smiled. It was not a comforting expression. "You're going to be my mate," he said. The words didn't make sense. Lena heard them, but they bounced off her brain like water off stone, like her mind was refusing to process something that impossible. "I'm... what?" "My political mate," Kale clarified, watching her face carefully. "A strategic bonding to force the council to address Omega rights. They can ignore legislation. They can't ignore the Alpha King choosing an Omega bride. You're insane, Lena whispered. Probably, he agreed easily. But I'm also serious. This is your choice, Lena Vire. Go back to scrubbing floors in the Ironwood Pack, or become the future queen and help me tear down every law that made your life hell. That's not a real choice, Lena said, her voice rising. That's coercion? Kale's smile sharpened. Yes, but no more than the system's been coercing you your entire life. At least this time, you get something out of it. I'd be a target, Lena said, her mind racing, trying to find the trap, the lie, the angle she was missing. Every alpha in the territories would want me dead. Yes, the council would fight it. They'll try. It could start a war. It definitely will. Lena stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was a joke, a trick, some cruel game before he killed her anyway. But his expression was serious, deadly serious. Why? She finally asked. Why would you risk all that for some random Omega you just met? Kale's expression went hard, sharp, like she'd touched something raw. Because I'm tired of watching the system destroy people, he said quietly, and for the first time she heard something real in his voice. Something that wasn't calculation or cold strategy. And because you're right, I am a coward. I've been trying to change things from within a structure designed to resist change. It's time for a different strategy. He extended his hand. Long fingers, calloused palms. The hand of someone who'd held power so long he forgot what it felt like not to. So what's it going to be, Lena? He asked. Survival or revolution? Lena looked at his hand, looked at the throne behind him, black and sharp and terrifying. Looked at the door she could still walk out of, back to a life where she knew exactly how much pain to expect each day. She thought about Carrick's boot on her hand, about 4 years of swallowing humiliation, about every Omega who'd been crushed by this system and never had a chance to fight back. She thought about dying on her knees versus living on her feet. And then Lena Vire, rankless Omega, did something no one expected. She took the Alpha King's hand. Revolution, she said. Kale's smile was sharp as broken glass. Good, he said. Then let's break the world. The world broke faster than Lena expected. Within an hour, she'd been moved from the throne room to a suite of rooms that were bigger than the entire Omega barracks back at Ironwood. Within 2 hours, servants were measuring her for clothes that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. Within 3 hours, Kale had sent formal notification to the Territorial Council that he was taking a political mate. By morning, the territories were on fire. Lena stood at the window of her new rooms. Her rooms, what a concept, and watched the sun rise over the central lands. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, her brain tried to process what had just happened and came up empty. Yesterday, she'd been scrubbing floors. Today, she was the Alpha King's chosen mate. Tomorrow, she'd probably be dead. A knock on the door made her jump. Come in, she called, her voice rough from disuse. The door opened. A woman entered. Not a servant, Lena realized immediately. This woman moved with too much confidence, too much authority. She was maybe 40, dark-skinned and striking, dressed in formal business attire that screamed power. Lena Vire, the woman said. Not a question. I'm Vera Cross, chief advisor to the Alpha King. We need to talk. About? About how to keep you alive long enough to matter. Vera didn't wait for an invitation. She crossed to the sitting area, gestured for Lena to join her. Lena did, sinking into a chair that was probably worth more than the Ironwood Pack's entire furniture budget. Let me be direct, Vera said, pulling out a tablet. The council has called an emergency session for tomorrow morning. They're furious. 3 of the 7 members have already sent formal protests. 2 are demanding Kyle retract the mating announcement. 1, Alpha Gareth, actually, your former pack leader, hasn't responded at all. Gareth's on the council? Lena asked, surprised. Northern Territories representative. Vera's eyes were sharp. Did you know that? No. Interesting. Vera made a note. Regardless, the point is, you're going to walk into a room full of the most powerful alphas in the territories, and they're all going to want you gone. Not all of them will be polite about expressing that desire. So what do I do? Survive, Vera said flatly. Don't give them ammunition. Don't react to provocations. Don't... Don't fight back, Lena finished. Keep my head down, stay quiet, be invisible. Vira's expression flickered. I was going to say don't give them legal grounds to challenge the bonding, but yes, essentially. No. Excuse me? Lena met her eyes. I didn't agree to this so I could keep being invisible. If Kyle wants me to be his political mate, his symbol of change, then I need to actually be that. Not a quiet Omega who stands in the corner while alphas decide my fate. You'll get yourself killed, Vira said. Maybe. Lena's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. But I've been trying to survive my whole life, and it hasn't worked. Time to try something different. Vira stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. You know what? I like you. You're either brilliant or suicidal, but I like you. She stood. Council session is at 9 tomorrow morning. Dress formally. Someone will bring appropriate clothes. And Lena? Yes? The council chamber has witnesses. Whatever happens in there happens in public. Use that. Then she left, and Lena was alone again with the rising sun and a choice that couldn't be taken back. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. 7 thrones arranged in a semicircle, each elevated on its own dais. 7 of the most powerful alphas in the territories, each representing a different region. And in the center, facing them all, a single chair. For her. Lena walked into the chamber with her spine straight and her chin up, wearing a formal dress that probably cost more than her life was worth. It was deep blue, simple but elegant, and it made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The 7 council members watched her approach with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Alpha Gareth was there, sitting in the northern seat, his face carefully blank. He didn't acknowledge her, didn't even look directly at her. Lena didn't blame him. She'd probably just made his life exponentially more complicated. Kale stood to the side, not on a throne, but not quite part of the audience either, observing. His face gave away nothing. Sit, said a voice like grinding stone. The speaker was the alpha directly opposite her, a massive man with white hair and a face like granite. He radiated the kind of power that came from decades of absolute authority. Lena sat. Lena Vire, the granite-faced alpha, continued. Omega, rankless, unbonded, no pack, no family, no assets of any kind. That's me, Lena said. Do you know who I am? No. His eyes narrowed. I am Alpha Marcus Stone, Central Territories, Senior Counselor, and I am the one who will decide whether this farce of a bonding proceeds or not. I thought the Alpha King decided that, Lena said. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. The Alpha King, Marcus said, his voice dangerously soft, requires council approval for all formal bondings, particularly political ones. And this council is not inclined to approve an Omega mate. Why not? Why not? Marcus leaned forward. Because you bring nothing to this union. No political connections, no strategic value, no power. You are, by every measurable standard, worthless. The word hit like a slap. Lena felt her face flush, felt the old familiar shame trying to crawl up her throat. Then she remembered why she was here. You're right, she said. Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. I don't have political connections, Lena continued. I don't have strategic value by your standards. I don't have power. She paused. But I have something none of you do. And what is that? I know what it's like to be crushed by your system, Lena said, and her voice was clear, strong. I know what it's like to be treated as less than human. I know what it's like to spend 4 years scrubbing floors while people like you decide my worth based on things I can't control. Careful, Omega, Marcus warned. My name is Lena. She stood up. Vira had told her to stay seated, to be careful, to not provoke them. But staying seated felt too much like kneeling. And I'm not afraid of you. That was a lie. She was terrified. But fear and truth could coexist. Another council member spoke up, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. The Alpha King has made it clear this is a political bonding to address Omega rights. But what makes you think you can speak for all Omegas? You're one person, one story. I don't speak for all Omegas, Lena said, but I can speak to what the system does, how it breaks people, how it makes survival feel like the best you can hope for. Pretty words, the woman said dismissively, But this council requires more than speeches. If you're to be the Alpha King's mate, you need to prove you can handle the scrutiny, the pressure, the enemies this will create. How? The woman smiled. It was not a kind expression. Answer our questions, truthfully, completely. Let us see exactly what kind of Omega thinks she can be queen. Lena looked at Kael. He met her eyes, gave the tiniest nod. Your choice, his expression said. Lena turned back to the council. Ask, she said. What followed was brutal. They asked about her family. Gone. Her pack? Dissolved. Her work history? 4 years of manual labor. Her education? Basic, nothing special. Her skills? Cleaning, mostly. Her value? By their metrics, none. They asked about the messages she'd sent. Read them aloud, word by word, making her stand there while they dissected every sentence, every insult, every accusation. You called the Alpha King a coward, Marcus said. Do you stand by that statement? I do. Even now? Even knowing he's offered you a way out of your miserable life? He didn't offer me a way out, Lena said. He offered me a different kind of fight. And yes, I stand by it. The system is broken. He's been king for 5 years and it's still broken. That's on him. Kael's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. The questions continued. About her past, her trauma, her scars. They made her recount every humiliation, every abuse, every moment of her life that proved she was damaged goods. They were trying to break her. Lena felt it. Felt them pushing, probing, looking for the crack that would make her crumble. But she'd already been broken. 4 years in the Ironwood Pack had seen to that. The difference was, she'd learned to keep moving with broken pieces. Enough, Gareth said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He'd been silent through the whole interrogation, sitting in his throne like a statue. This is pointless, he continued, his voice rough. We all know why we're really here. The Alpha King wants to use this girl as a political tool. Fine. That's his prerogative. But let's stop pretending this is about whether she's worthy. She's not. By our standards, no Omega is. That's the whole point of what he's trying to do. Then you support this? Marcus demanded. I didn't say that. Gareth finally looked at Lena, really looked at her. I'm saying we should be honest about what this is. It's not a love match. It's not a strategic alliance. It's a calculated move to force reform. He leaned forward. The question isn't whether she's worthy. The question is whether we're willing to let the Alpha King reshape our society to protect the weak. The weak, Lena said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, are only weak because you've built a system that crushes them. Given equal opportunity, equal protection, equal rights, we'd be just as strong as anyone else in this room. Bold claim, Marcus said. Can you prove it? Give me the chance, and I will. This isn't a chance, another council member interjected. A younger Alpha with cold eyes. This is a spectacle. The Alpha King parading an Omega bride to make a point. It's humiliating, for her, for this council, for the entire system of governance we've built. Good, Kael said, speaking for the first time since the session began. Everyone turned to look at him. It should be humiliating, he continued, his voice cold and clear. This system deserves to be humiliated. It deserves to be torn down and rebuilt. And if it takes an Omega bride to make that happen, so be it. He walked to the center of the chamber, stood next to Lena's chair. I'm not asking for your approval, he said. I'm informing you of my decision. Lena Vire is my chosen mate. The bonding will proceed. What I need from this council is support in the reforms that will follow. And if we refuse, Marcus asked, then I'll push them through anyway. It'll just be messier. Kael's smile was sharp. Your choice? The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Marcus stood. This council will take a recess to discuss the matter. The Omega will wait outside. Her name, Lena said quietly, is Lena. Marcus's eyes went cold. The Omega, he repeated deliberately, will wait outside. Kael touched her arm, light, brief, a warning or support. Lena couldn't tell. Go, he said quietly. I'll handle this. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fight, but she could feel the hostility in the room like a physical weight, could see the way the council members looked at her. like she was an insect that had wandered somewhere it didn't belong. She stood, walked toward the door with her head high and her hands shaking. Behind her, she heard Marcus say, "This is a mistake, Kael." She didn't hear Kael's response. The door closed, and she was alone in the hallway with her racing heart and the crushing weight of what she'd just walked into. The recess lasted 3 hours. Lena spent them pacing the hallway, watched by guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. Vera came by once, brought water Lena couldn't drink, asked if she was all right. Lena lied and said yes. Finally, the doors opened. Vera appeared. "They're ready for you." Lena walked back into the chamber. The 7 council members sat in their thrones, their faces giving away nothing. Kael stood to the side, his expression unreadable. Marcus spoke. "The council has reached a decision," he said. "By a vote of 4 to 3, we will allow the bonding to proceed." Lena's knees went weak with relief. "However," Marcus continued, and his voice went hard, "there are conditions." "What conditions?" Lena asked. "You will undergo a trial period of 3 months," Marcus said. "During that time, you will be expected to participate in council sessions, learn the workings of territorial governance, and prove you can handle the responsibilities of a queen." "I can do that." "I'm not finished." Marcus's eyes were cold. "You will also be subject to challenges." "What kind of challenges?" "Any council member may issue a formal challenge at any time during the trial period. You will be required to defend yourself and your position. Fail to do so adequately, and the bonding will be dissolved." Lena's stomach dropped. "That's not fair," she said. "Life isn't fair, Omega," Marcus replied. "You should know that better than anyone. These are the terms. Accept them or walk away." Lena looked at Kael. He met her eyes, and she saw the calculation there. The strategic assessment. This was the best deal they were going to get. "I accept," Lena said. Marcus smiled. It looked like a wolf baring teeth. "Excellent. Then let me be the first to issue a challenge." He gestured to someone Lena couldn't see. "Bring him in." The side door opened. Beta Carrick walked into the chamber. Lena's heart stopped. Carrick looked different than he had in the transport. Cleaned up, wearing formal clothes, but his expression was the same. Uncomfortable, cornered, like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Beta Carrick," Marcus said, "served as enforcer at the Ironwood Pack for 6 years. He oversaw Omega labor assignments, including yours, I believe." "Yes," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then you know him well." Marcus leaned forward. "Tell me, Lena Vire, in your vision of reformed Omega rights, what happens to men like Beta Carrick? Men who enforce the system you claim is broken. Men who, by your own account, caused you harm." The trap snapped shut. Lena understood immediately. This wasn't about Carrick. This was about testing her. If she called for punishment, she'd look vindictive. If she excused him, she'd look weak. Either way, she'd lose. She looked at Carrick. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Beta Carrick," she said slowly, "did what he was trained to do. What the system rewarded him for doing. He enforced rules he didn't make." "So you excuse his behavior?" Marcus pressed. "No." Lena's voice was firm. "I'm saying the system is the problem, not the individual enforcers. Change the system, and people like Carrick won't have the authority to abuse people like me." "Pretty theory," Marcus said, "but what about accountability? What about justice for what was done to you?" Lena thought about Carrick's boot on her hand, about 4 years of humiliation. She thought about the system that made it possible. "Justice," she said carefully, "isn't about revenge. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. And that means changing the laws, not punishing everyone who followed them." She met Carrick's eyes. "I don't forgive him," she said. "But I don't need him punished either. I need the system that empowered him to change." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Gareth spoke. "She's right," he said. Marcus turned to glare at him. "The girl is right," Gareth repeated. "We built a system that crushes Omegas. We rewarded people for enforcing that system. Now we're mad that they enforced it? That's on us, not them." "You're saying there should be no consequences?" another council member demanded. "I'm saying the consequences should be structural, not personal. Change the laws, change the incentives, change the system." Gareth looked at Lena. "That's what she's been saying all along. Maybe we should listen. Marcus's expression went cold. This challenge is concluded, he said curtly. Beta Carrick, you're dismissed. Carrick left quickly, still not looking at Lena. However, Marcus continued, I believe this trial period will be illuminating. We'll see what other challenges arise. His smile said there would be many. Kael stepped forward. The council is dismissed. Lena, with me. He didn't wait for her response, just turned and walked toward a side exit. Lena followed on shaking legs. They walked in silence through hallways she didn't recognize, past servants who stopped and stared. Finally, Kael opened a door to a small office, gestured her inside. As soon as the door closed, Lena's knees buckled. She caught herself on the desk, breathing hard, trying to process what had just happened. You did well, Kael said. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. They hate me, Lena said. They're going to spend the next 3 months trying to destroy me. Yes, Kael agreed. Probably. And you're okay with that? He met her eyes. I told you this would be a war. Did you think I was being metaphorical? Lena laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. No, she said. I guess I didn't. Kael moved closer, studied her face. You can still back out. Return to Ironwood. I'll tell the council you weren't suitable. And let them win? And let you survive. Lena straightened up, wiped her eyes, met his gaze. I already told you. I'm done surviving. Something shifted in Kael's expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Then we fight, he said. Together? He extended his hand again, like he had in the throne room. Together. Lena took it. And somewhere in the Central Lands, the system Marcus Stone had spent his life protecting began to crack. The first public challenge came 3 days later. Lena was in her suite, reviewing territorial law with Vire, trying to cram years of legal education into weeks, when the summons arrived. A formal messenger in palace livery carrying a sealed envelope with the council's insignia. Vire opened it, read it, and her face went pale. What? Lena asked. Alpha Marcus has issued a formal challenge. You're required to appear before the full council tomorrow at noon. Vire looked up, her eyes worried. He's calling you to defend the fundamental premise of Omega equality under territorial law. That doesn't sound so bad, Lena. Vire set down the letter carefully, like it might explode. He's not asking you to give a speech about fairness. He's asking you to argue legal precedent in front of the 7 most educated alphas in the territories. This is an arena designed to humiliate you, to prove you don't have the knowledge or standing to be queen. So I'll learn, Lena said, gesturing to the book spread across the table. We have until noon tomorrow. That's... She checked the clock. 18 hours. Teach me. Vire laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical. You can't learn 2 centuries of territorial law in 18 hours. Then teach me what I need to survive 18 minutes in that chamber. That's not how this works. They'll have prepared arguments, citations, legal theory going back to the founding of the territories. You'll walk in there with nothing and they'll tear you apart. Vire. Lena met her eyes. I've spent 4 years getting torn apart. I'm still here. So teach me what you can and I'll figure out the rest. Vire stared at her for a long moment. Then she sat down, pulled over a fresh tablet, and started talking. They worked through the night. Vire outlined the basics. Territorial law was built on a hierarchy of dominance, alpha at the top, beta in the middle, omega at the bottom. Every legal protection, every right, every privilege was tied to rank. Omegas had some protections. They couldn't be killed outright, couldn't be denied basic food and shelter, but those protections were minimal, conditional, revocable. The law treats omegas as dependents, Vire explained around 3 in the morning, both of them running on coffee and fear. Like children. You have the right to be cared for, but not the right to self-determination. You can't own property, can't enter contracts without alpha approval, can't hold positions of authority. That's insane, Lena said. That's the law. Vire pulled up another document. And it's been the law for 200 years. Every attempt to change it has failed. The council argues that the hierarchy is natural, biological, that alphas are meant to lead, betas to support, omegas to follow. But that's not true. Prove it. Lena opened her mouth, closed it, stared at the documents in front of her. How did you prove something like that? How did you argue against 200 years of legal precedent and biological determinism and a system designed to justify itself? I can't, she said finally. I can't prove it with law or science or logic, because the system wrote the laws, funded the science, defined the logic. It's all circular. Then you're going to lose tomorrow, Vera said quietly. Maybe. Lena stood up, started pacing. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the argument isn't about winning on their terms. Maybe it's about showing why their terms are rigged. That won't save you. Probably not, but it might plant a seed. Vera looked at her like she was looking at someone already dead. You know what Marcus is going to do, right? He's going to ask you to cite legal precedent, to quote founding documents, to prove you've earned the right to have opinions about law. And when you can't, he's going to use that as evidence that Omegas aren't capable of leadership. Let him. Lena, let him, Lena repeated, and her voice was hard now, clear. Because that's the trap, isn't it? If I play by their rules, I lose. The rules are designed to make me lose, so I won't play. What will you do? Lena met her eyes. Tell the truth. The council chamber was packed. Apparently word had spread that the Omega bride was going to be publicly humiliated, and half the palace wanted to watch. Nobles, advisors, bureaucrats, they lined the walls, filled the gallery, packed every available space. Lena walked in wearing another formal dress, this one black, severe, chosen by Vera to make her look serious, and took her seat in the center. The 7 council members sat in their thrones, watching, waiting. Kael stood to the side again. Observer, not participant. His face gave away nothing, but Lena thought she saw tension in the set of his shoulders. Marcus stood. Lena Vire, you have claimed that the territorial legal system is unjust in its treatment of Omegas. You have stated that Omegas deserve equal rights under law. You now have the opportunity to defend that claim before this council and these witnesses. He gestured broadly to the packed chamber. Please, he said, his voice dripping false courtesy. Enlighten us. On what legal grounds do you base your assertion? Lena stood. Every eye in the room fixed on her. She could feel their judgment, their certainty that she was about to fail, could feel the weight of 200 years of law pressing down on her shoulders. I don't, she said. Silence. Marcus blinked. Excuse me? I don't have legal grounds, Lena said clearly. I haven't studied law. I can't cite precedent. I don't know the founding documents or the theoretical frameworks or whatever else you're expecting me to recite. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members smiled. Then you concede the challenge? Marcus asked. No. Lena took a breath. I'm saying the challenge is rigged. You're asking me to prove Omega equality using a legal system built specifically to deny it. That's like asking me to prove water is wet using only fire as evidence. The law is the foundation of our society, Marcus said, his voice going cold. If you can't argue within the law, you have no standing to criticize it. Why not? The question hung in the air. Because, Marcus said slowly, like he was explaining to a child, the law represents the collective wisdom of generations, the carefully reasoned judgments of our greatest minds. You can't simply dismiss that because it doesn't suit your personal preferences. Can't I? Lena asked. Your carefully reasoned law says I'm less than human. It says I can't own property, can't make decisions, can't hold authority. It says I exist to serve and obey. So either I accept that I'm fundamentally inferior, or I reject the law that says so. I choose rejection. On what authority? On my own authority, Lena said, and her voice was steady now, firm. I've lived under your law. I've been crushed by it. I've spent 4 years having it beaten into me that I'm worthless, and I'm here to tell you, the law is wrong. Bold words, another council member interjected, but feelings aren't arguments. Emotion isn't evidence. You're right, Lena agreed. So let me ask you something. What evidence would you accept? What proof could I possibly offer that you'd consider valid? The council member opened his mouth, closed it. That's what I thought, Lena said, because there is no evidence you'd accept. If I cite science, you'll say it's biased. If I cite other territories with different laws, you'll say their systems don't apply here. If I cite moral philosophy, you'll say morality is subjective. You've built a perfect circle of logic that protects your system from any challenge. The system works, Marcus said. It's maintained order for 200 years. Order for who? Lena demanded. For alphas? Sure, for betas, mostly. For omegas? She laughed, bitter. We survive. If you call that working, then we have very different definitions. You're alive, Marcus shot back. You're fed, you're housed. The system provided for you. The system crushed me, Lena corrected. The Ironwood Pack provided food and shelter the same way you'd provide it to livestock. Enough to keep us functional, not enough to let us thrive. And if I'd broken, if the work or the abuse or the sheer weight of it had killed me, the system would have shrugged and found another Omega to fill my place. She stepped forward, away from her chair. That's not providing, that's exploitation, and calling it law doesn't make it right. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Several council members started talking at once. Marcus slammed his hand down, calling for order. You speak of abuse, he said once the noise died down. Do you have evidence? Formal complaints filed with your pack leadership? Testimony from witnesses? No. Then how do we know you're telling the truth? Lena held up her hands. The scars from years of lye soap and hard labor were visible even from across the chamber. Look at me, she said quietly. I'm 21 years old. I look 40. My hands are permanently damaged. I have bruises that never fully healed. I flinch when alphas raise their voices. I can't sleep through the night because I'm used to being woken up for extra shifts. She met Marcus's eyes. You want evidence? I'm the evidence. My body is the evidence. Every Omega in this territory carries the same evidence written on their skin. You just choose not to see it. Individual hardship doesn't invalidate the system, Marcus argued. Every system has casualties. That's reality. And when the casualties outnumber the successes, Lena asked, when you have to break thousands of people to maintain order for hundreds, at what point does the system become the problem? Never, Marcus said flatly. Because the alternative is chaos. Without hierarchy, without structure, society collapses. Alphas lead because we're built to lead. Omegas follow because that's your nature. Fighting that is fighting biology itself. Is it? Lena asked. Because I'm fighting it right now. I'm standing in front of the Territorial Council, arguing law with the senior counselor, and I'm an Omega. If it was really my nature to follow, I'd be on my knees begging for mercy. But I'm not. So either biology is more flexible than you think, or your understanding of it is wrong. You're an aberration, Marcus said dismissively. One Omega with delusions of adequacy doesn't prove anything. Then test it, Lena said. Change the law. Give Omegas equal rights, equal education, equal opportunity. And let's see what happens. If you're right, if we're biologically incapable of leadership, then nothing changes. We'll still end up in subordinate positions. But if you're wrong, she let the sentence hang. Marcus's expression went hard. This council is not a laboratory for social experiments. No, Lena agreed. It's a protection racket for alpha privilege, which is why this conversation is pointless. You don't care about evidence or logic or truth. You care about maintaining power. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing left to lose, Lena interrupted, her voice rising. You've already taken everything. My pack, my family, my childhood, my body's health, my sense of safety. The only thing I have left is my voice, and I'm not going to waste it pretending your system is anything other than what it is, organized cruelty dressed up as law. The chamber exploded. Half the audience started shouting. Council members were on their feet. Marcus was yelling for order, his face purple with rage. And Lena stood in the center of it all, shaking but upright, watching the system crack. Kael stepped forward. Enough, he said, and his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The Omega has defended her position. The challenge is concluded. She's proven nothing, Marcus snarled, except that she's as disrespectful and unreasonable as we feared. She's proven, Kael said coldly, that she can stand in front of this council and speak truth to power, which is more than most of you have done in years. He looked at Lena. You're dismissed. Lena didn't move immediately. She looked at each council member in turn, memorizing their faces, their expressions of rage and discomfort, and, in Gareth's case, something that might have been approval. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber with her head high, and her hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them behind her back to hide it. The door closed behind her, She made it 5 steps down the hallway before her legs gave out. Vera was there immediately, catching her before she hit the floor. "I've got you," Vera said. "I've got you." Lena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The adrenaline that had carried her through the session was draining away, leaving nothing but exhaustion and fear and the crushing realization of what she'd just done. She'd stood in front of the most powerful alphas in the territories and told them their system was built on cruelty. They were going to destroy her for it. "Come on," Vera said gently, helping her stand. "Let's get you somewhere private." They made it to Lena's suite. Vera poured her water she couldn't drink, sat her down in a chair she couldn't stay in. Lena kept standing, kept pacing, kept trying to process what had just happened. "I messed up," she said finally. "I should have been diplomatic. I should have—" "You were perfect," Vera interrupted. Lena stopped. "What?" "You were perfect," Vera repeated, and there were tears in her eyes. "Do you know how long I've worked in this palace? 20 years. 20 years of watching the council make decisions that hurt people, and I've never once seen anyone call them out like that. Not to their faces, not with witnesses. But I didn't win the challenge. I didn't prove anything." "You proved you can't be intimidated," Vera said. "You proved you're willing to fight even when the odds are impossible. And you proved that maybe, this system can be challenged." A knock on the door interrupted them. Vera answered it, came back looking worried. "Kael wants to see you," she said, "in his private study, now." Lena's stomach dropped. "He's angry." "I don't know, but you need to go." Lena went. Kael's private study was smaller than she'd expected. Books lined the walls. A desk covered in documents sat near the window. It looked like a place where actual work got done, not a showpiece. Kael stood by the window, looking out over the central lands. He didn't turn when she entered. "Close the door," he said. Lena did. Silence stretched between them. "I'm sorry," Lena said finally. "I know you told me to be strategic, to survive the challenges, and You were magnificent," Kael interrupted. He turned to face her. "I've spent 5 years trying to reform the council through legislation and negotiation. 5 years of careful political maneuvering, and in 18 minutes, you accomplished more than I have in all that time." "I accomplished making them hate me." "You accomplished making them reveal themselves," Kael corrected, "making them say out loud what we all knew they believed, that the system is designed to protect their power, and they'll defend it regardless of the harm it causes. Now everyone who witnessed that session knows it too." He crossed to his desk, pulled out a tablet, showed her the screen. It was a news feed. The session had been recorded. Apparently all council challenges were public record, and the footage was spreading across the territories like wildfire. Omega Bride Challenges Council. Organized cruelty, dressed up as law. Political mate. Accuses senior counselor of protecting alpha privilege. Lena Vire's testimony. Sparks debate on Omega rights. "It's everywhere," Kael said. "Every news outlet, every social platform, every PAC forum. People are talking, debating, questioning." "But they're also angry," Lena said, scrolling through the comments. Half were supportive, half wanted her executed for disrespect. "Change is always divisive," Kael said. "The point isn't to make everyone happy. The point is to force the conversation." He took the tablet back. "Marcus is furious. He's calling for another challenge next week, something more aggressive." "What could be more aggressive than today?" Kael's expression went grim. "He's going to challenge your right to speak for Omegas. He's going to call other Omegas to testify that the system works for them, that you're an outlier, that your suffering was the result of a bad pack, not bad law." Lena felt cold. "And if he finds Omegas who say that?" "He will," Kael said bluntly. "There are always people who defend the system that oppresses them, who've internalized the hierarchy so completely they can't imagine anything else. Marcus will find the Omegas who've had decent lives, who've been treated well by benevolent alphas, and he'll parade them in front of the council to prove you're wrong." "So what do I do?" "You tell your truth," Kael said. "You don't claim to speak for all Omegas. You speak for the ones who can't speak for themselves, the ones who've been crushed, and you force the council to explain why their suffering doesn't matter just because some Omegas are doing fine." He moved closer. "But Lena, you need to understand, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Marcus isn't going to stop with challenges. He's going to go after you personally, your past, your credibility, anything he can use to discredit you. I know. Do you? Kael's eyes were intense. Because there are things I don't know about you, things you haven't told me. And if Marcus finds them first, he'll use them. Lena's breath caught. She thought about her time at Ironwood, about the things she'd done to survive, the compromises she'd made, the pieces of herself she'd given away because it was that, or starve. There's nothing to find, she said. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Kael studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, he said. But if that changes, if Marcus digs up something you think he might use, tell me first. Let me prepare a defense instead of being blindsided. Okay. He turned back to the window. The council session caused another problem. Alpha Gareth requested a private meeting with me. He's coming tomorrow. What does he want? I don't know, but he was the one who spoke in your defense today, which means he's either genuinely supportive or he's playing a different game. Kael's jaw tightened. Either way, I need to know where he stands. Do you want me there? No, this is alpha business, council politics. You being present would complicate it. He paused. But I'll tell you what he says. Lena nodded, trying to ignore the sting of being excluded, trying to remember this was strategy, not personal. Get some rest, Kael said. Next week is going to be brutal. Lena left. She didn't rest. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face, heard his voice calling her an aberration, saw the crowd's reactions, half supportive, half hostile, all intense. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went to the palace library. It was enormous. 3 floors of books and documents and historical records. Lena had never seen so many books in one place. She started pulling anything related to Omega rights, historical challenges, legal precedents, reform attempts. If Marcus was going to come at her with 200 years of law, she needed to at least understand what she was up against. She was deep in a document from 80 years ago, a failed attempt to grant Omega's property rights, when someone cleared their throat behind her. Lena jumped, spun around. Alpha Gareth stood in the doorway, still wearing his council robes from earlier. Didn't mean to startle you, he said. What are you doing here? Lena asked. Could ask you the same thing. It's past midnight. Couldn't sleep. Gareth nodded slowly, moved into the library, began examining the books she'd pulled. Studying up on legal history? He asked. Trying to. Won't help. Lena felt a flare of irritation. Why not? Because you were right today. The system is rigged. Knowing the details of how it's rigged doesn't change that. He pulled out a chair, sat down heavily. I've been on the council for 12 years. 12 years of watching Omegas get crushed and telling myself it was just how things worked. Natural order, biological reality, all the comfortable lies we tell ourselves to avoid feeling guilty. Why are you telling me this? Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten, Gareth said. That comfort built on someone else's suffering isn't worth having. He met her eyes. I'm sorry, he said, for what happened at Ironwood, for the system that allowed it, for not doing something sooner. Lena didn't know what to say. An apology from Gareth felt surreal, impossible. Why now? She asked. Because you're fighting, Gareth said simply, and I'm tired of watching from the sidelines. So you're going to support the reforms? I'm going to try. He pulled out a document from inside his robe, slid it across the table. This is a draft proposal for Omega property rights. I've been working on it for 3 years, never had the guts to actually submit it. But after today, after watching you stand up to Marcus, he pushed the document closer. I think it's time. Lena picked it up, scanned the contents. It was technical, full of legal language she didn't fully understand, but the core was clear. Omegas would be allowed to own property, enter contracts, hold assets in their own names. It was a start. This is good, she said. It'll never pass, Gareth said bluntly. Marcus will kill it before it reaches a vote, but maybe if enough of us keep pushing, keep forcing the conversation, eventually something will break through. You really believe that? I have to, Gareth said, because the alternative is accepting that I spent 12 years enabling a system that destroys people. And I'm not ready to accept that. He stood to leave, paused at the door. Lena, there's something you should know. Marcus is planning something bigger than legal challenges. What? I don't have details, but I heard him talking to some of the other council members after today's session. He's convinced you're a threat that needs to be eliminated, and he's looking for a permanent solution. Cold fear washed through Lena's chest. He's going to kill me. I don't think he'll do it directly, too obvious, but he's looking for a way to make you disappear that can't be traced back to the council. Gareth's expression was grim. Watch your back. Don't go anywhere alone, and don't trust anyone who wasn't in that chamber today. Then he left, and Lena was alone with the books and the suffocating realization that she'd made an enemy powerful enough to kill her and get away with it. The attack came 2 days later. Lena was walking back to her suite after another session with Vire, this time preparing for Marcus's next challenge, when the hallway lights went out. Complete darkness. Lena froze. Hello? No answer. Then she heard footsteps. Multiple people, moving fast. Her Omega instinct screamed at her to run. She ran. Behind her, the footsteps accelerated. She could hear them gaining, could hear the deliberate coordination of a planned attack. She rounded a corner, slammed into something solid. Arms grabbed her. A hand clamped over her mouth. Lena bit down hard, tasted blood. The hand jerked away and she screamed, "Help! Someone!" Something hit the back of her head. The world tilted. She went down hard, knees cracking against stone. Hands grabbed her arms, started dragging her. "Get her out of here," someone hissed. Male voice, unfamiliar. "Where?" "Doesn't matter. Somewhere the king won't find her." Lena thrashed, trying to break free, but there were too many of them. 3, maybe 4 people, all stronger than her. They were going to take her somewhere quiet and kill her. She opened her mouth to scream again. Light flooded the hallway. The hands released her immediately. Footsteps retreated fast. Lena scrambled backward, her head throbbing, and saw Kael standing at the end of the hallway with a dozen palace guards. "Find them," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Now." The guards scattered. Kael crossed to Lena, knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" "My head," she managed. "They hit me." He examined the back of her skull carefully. His fingers came away bloody. Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Who were they?" he demanded. "I don't know. It was dark. They said—" She tried to remember through the throbbing pain. "They said to get me somewhere you wouldn't find me." Kael's jaw clenched. "Marcus. You don't know that. Who else?" He helped her stand and she swayed on her feet. "He challenged you publicly. You humiliated him. Now he's trying to remove you permanently. Can you prove it?" "Not without starting a war." Kael's expression was grim, which is exactly why he did it this way. Deniable. Untraceable. The guards returned, shaking their heads. No one found. Of course not. Kael dismissed them, then turned to Lena. "You're moving into my wing of the palace. Private guards. No one gets near you without my approval." "That'll look like—" "I don't care how it looks," Kael interrupted. "They tried to kill you. They'll try again, and next time I might not get there in time." He was right. Lena knew he was right. But moving into the Alpha King's wing would destroy any remaining illusion that this was a political arrangement, would make it look real, personal, intimate. "Okay," she said quietly. Kael studied her face. "Are you sure?" "No, but I don't have better options." He almost smiled. "Honest. I appreciate that." He helped her walk to his wing, a series of interconnected rooms that were somehow both more luxurious and more lived in than her current suite. There were books everywhere, documents, half-finished coffee cups on every surface. "Sorry for the mess," Kael said, clearing a chair. "I don't usually have guests." "It's fine." Lena sat down carefully, her head still pounding. Kael went to a cabinet, returned with a first aid kit, started cleaning the wound on her head with surprising gentleness. "This is going to change things," he said quietly. "You living here, people will talk. Let them. It'll complicate the political narrative." "Everything about this is complicated." Lena winced as he applied antiseptic. "What's one more complication?" Kael's hand stilled for a moment. Then he continued working. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about why I'm really doing this." Lena waited. 5 years ago, before I became king, I had a sister. Younger. Omega. Brilliant, funny, full of life. His voice went flat. She was bonded to an alpha who seemed decent, respectable family, good position. Then 2 years into the bond, he started getting violent. She tried to leave. The law said she couldn't. Omegas can't dissolve bonds without alpha consent. Lena's chest tightened. She died 3 months later. KL continued, his hand steady, but his voice rough. Officially ruled an accident. Everyone knew what really happened. No one did anything because the law protected him. He finished bandaging her head, stepped back. That's when I decided the system had to change. That's why I've spent 5 years trying to reform it. That's why I chose you. He met her eyes. Because you remind me of her. The way you fight. The way you refuse to stay down. Lena didn't know what to say. The grief in his voice was raw, real. I'm sorry, she managed. Don't be sorry. Help me make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. I will. KL nodded once, started to leave, paused at the door. Marcus won't stop, he said. Tonight was a warning. Next time will be worse. I know. Then you need to decide. Are you in this all the way, or do you want out before it gets more dangerous? Lena thought about the attack, about being dragged through dark hallways by people who wanted her dead, about the very real possibility that she wouldn't survive the next 3 months. She thought about Kael's sister, about every Omega crushed by a system that valued their lives less than convenience. I'm in, she said. All the way? All the way. Kael held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow we go on the offensive. He left, and Lena was alone in the Alpha King's wing with a bandaged head and a choice that couldn't be taken back. Somewhere in the palace, Marcus Stone was planning his next move, and Lena was going to have to be ready. She woke at dawn to find Kyle already working at his desk, surrounded by documents and empty coffee cups. He looked up when he heard her move, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept at all. How's your head? He asked. Lena touched the bandage gingerly. Hurts, but I'll live. Good, because we have work to do. He gestured to the papers spread across his desk. I spent the night pulling records on every council member. Financial transactions, political alliances, personal connections. If Marcus is coordinating attacks against you, he's not doing it alone. Someone on that council is helping him. You think it's more than one? I think Marcus is too smart to act without backup. Cale pulled up a document on his tablet. 3 council members voted against allowing the bonding. Marcus, obviously. Alpha Devon from the Eastern Territories, and Alpha Sienna from the Southern Coast. They're the ones most invested in maintaining the current system. What about the 4 who voted for it? Gareth, Alpha Yuki from the Western Mountains voted yes, but she's been quiet since. Alpha Thomas from the Coastal Plains is neutral, votes whichever way benefits his trade routes. And Alpha Chen from the Border Territories is genuinely progressive, but she's the newest council member. Doesn't have much influence yet. Lena absorbed this, trying to map the political landscape in her head. So we have 1 solid ally, 1 possible ally, 2 neutrals, and 3 active enemies. That's my read. Cale stood, started pacing. Which means we need to shift the balance, turn one of the neutrals into support, or weaken Marcus's coalition enough that they can't coordinate against you. How? By doing exactly what you did in that council chamber. Force the truth into the open where they can't ignore it. He turned to face her. Marcus is planning another challenge for next week. He's going to bring in Omegas who say the system works for them. Try to paint you as an outlier. We're not going to let him control that narrative. What do you mean? Kael's expression was sharp, calculating. We're going to find our own Omegas, the ones Marcus doesn't want anyone to see. The ones whose stories prove the system is broken, and we're going to put them in front of the council before Marcus has a chance to stage his performance. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. You want to parade traumatized Omegas in front of a hostile council? I want to give them a platform to speak their truth, Kael corrected. Same as you had. But yes, it'll be brutal. It'll be traumatic. And some of them might not be willing to do it. Then we can't ask them. Why not? Because we'd be using them, Lena said, her voice rising. Using their pain to make a political point. That's exactly what Marcus does, treats people like tools. I won't do that. Kael studied her face for a long moment. What if they want to speak? What if giving them that opportunity is exactly what they need? Then we ask, we offer, we make it clear they can say no without consequences. Lena met his eyes. But we don't manipulate them into it. Agreed. Kyle nodded slowly. How do we find them? Lena thought about the Omega barracks at Ironwood, about the shared suffering that created bonds stronger than family, about the underground networks of Omegas helping each other survive. I know someone who might help, she said, if she's still alive. Mira, her friend from the online forums, the one she'd been texting the night everything changed. Lena hadn't thought about her in days, hadn't had time. But if anyone knew which Omegas might be willing to speak, it would be Mira. She pulled out her phone, the battered old one from Ironwood, not the sleek Palace-issued device Vera had given her, and opened the messaging app. 47 unread messages from Mira. Lena's throat tightened as she scrolled through them. Mira, oh my God, you actually did it. Mira, you're all over the news. Mira, are you okay? Mira, please tell me you're okay. Mira, Lena, if you're dead, I'm going to be so mad at you. Mira, okay. I saw footage of the council session. Mira, you're not dead. Mira, you're magnificent. Mira, also completely insane, but mostly magnificent. The messages went on. Questions, worry, support, and finally, 3 days ago. Mira, I'm coming to the Central Lands. Mira, there are 12 other Omegas from my territory who want to come too. Mira, we want to help Mira. Please tell me you're alive so we know where to go. Lena stared at the screen. What is it? Kale asked. My friend Mira. She's organizing Omegas who want to testify. Lena looked up. She's bringing them here. When? 3 days ago, apparently. Lena started typing rapidly. If they're already in the Central Lands, we need to find them before Marcus does. She sent the message. Waited. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Mira. Lena. Mira. We're at a shelter on the east side. Mira. 3rd Street, Building 47. Mira. When can you come? Lena showed Kyle the message. That's in the industrial district, he said, frowning. Not a great area. High crime, minimal security. Which is why displaced Omegas end up there, Lena said. It's the only place that doesn't ask questions. We'll need security. I'm not letting you walk into an ambush. It's not an ambush. It's Mira. You haven't seen her in person for 2 years. You don't know who she's become, or who might be using her to get to you. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist Mira was trustworthy. But Kyle was right. She didn't actually know. The attack 2 nights ago had made that clear. Anyone could be a threat. Fine, she said. Bring security, but they stay outside. Mira won't talk if she thinks it's some kind of official operation. Kyle nodded. We leave in an hour. The industrial district looked exactly like Lena expected. Broken windows, crumbling infrastructure, people who watched the palace vehicles with hostile suspicion. This was where the system's failures lived, where people fell through the cracks and stopped trying to climb back out. Building 47 was a converted warehouse, now functioning as an emergency shelter. The sign out front read, Omega Relief Services, but half the letters were missing. Kyle's security team swept the building first, came back reporting no immediate threats, just a lot of scared Omegas. I'll go in alone, Lena said. Not happening. Kyle, you were attacked 2 days ago, he said flatly. I'm not leaving you unguarded. Then you come with me. Just you. No one else. He studied her face, then nodded. All right. They entered the shelter together. Inside was chaos. 30, maybe 40 Omegas packed into a space meant for 20. Makeshift beds, scarce food, the smell of too many unwashed bodies in too small a space. It reminded Lena of the Ironwood barracks, only worse. A woman near the door saw her and gasped. You're her, she whispered. The Omega bride. From the videos. Everyone turned to stare. Lena felt exposed, vulnerable. These were her people. Omegas who'd been crushed by the system, but they were looking at her like she was something else now, something other. I'm looking for Mira, she said. Mira Chen? Here. A voice from the back. The crowd parted. Mira looked different than her profile pictures. Thinner. Harder. She had a scar across her left eyebrow that was new, and her hands shook slightly as she moved. But her eyes were the same, sharp, warm, alive. "Lena," she said, and pulled her into a hug so tight it hurt. Lena hugged back, feeling something break loose in her chest. This was real. Mira was real. After weeks of palace politics and formal challenges and assassination attempts, here was someone who knew her as just Lena. Not the Omega Bride. Not a political tool. Just her. "I can't believe you're actually here," Mira said, pulling back to look at her. "When I saw the news, when I saw what you did in that council chamber, I thought—" She laughed, shaky. "I thought maybe you'd finally lost it." "Maybe I did." "Good, it's about time." Mira glanced at Kael, who stood near the door trying to look less imposing and failing completely. "That's him, right? The Alpha King?" "Yeah." "He's scary." "Yeah." "But he's on our side." "I think so." Mira nodded slowly. "Okay, then let's talk." She led them to a corner that was slightly less crowded. 12 Omegas followed, the ones she'd mentioned in her messages. They looked nervous, scared but determined. "These are the ones willing to testify," Mira said. "They've all been through different kinds of hell, different packs, different territories, different stories, but the same system." She gestured to a young woman, maybe 19. "This is Tessa. Her pack sold her to pay off debts. Legal sale, completely above board according to territorial law." Tessa nodded, not speaking. "This is Marcus." A man which surprised Lena. Male Omegas were rare. His pack tried to force him into breeding contracts. When he refused, they labeled him defective and tried to have him sterilized. Marcus met Lena's eyes. "I ran before they could do it. Been hiding for 2 years." Mira continued down the line. Abuse, exploitation, violations that were perfectly legal under the current system. Each story worse than the last. "They want to help," Mira said. "They want to tell the council what happened to them, but they're scared." "They should be," Kael said, speaking for the first time. "The council won't be kind. They'll question everything, challenge every detail, try to find reasons to dismiss each story as exceptional rather than systemic." "So why should we do it?" Tessa asked, her voice small. "Because you shouldn't have to," Lena said. "You shouldn't have to stand in front of people who hurt you and justify your pain. But the system won't change unless we force it to see what it's doing, and it can ignore one Omega. It can ignore 2. But 13? She looked at each of them. 13 different stories from 13 different territories proving the same thing. That's harder to dismiss. "Will it actually change anything?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," Lena admitted. "Maybe not, but it might. And if there's even a chance, then we have to take it," Mira finished. She looked at the others. "Right?" Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Kael stepped forward. "If you do this, I'll provide protection. Palace security, safe housing, legal representation if needed. You won't be abandoned after you testify." "And if we say no?" one of the others asked. "Then you say no," Lena said firmly. "No pressure. No consequences. This is your choice." She meant it, even though they desperately needed these testimonies, even though this might be their only chance to shift the council's perspective. She meant it. "I'm in," Mira said immediately. "Me too," Tessa whispered. One by one, they agreed. All 13. Kael pulled out his phone, started making arrangements. Transport, housing, security details. Mira pulled Lena aside. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "Really okay? Because the news makes it sound like you're in constant danger." "I am in constant danger." "Then why keep doing it?" Lena thought about that. About the attack in the hallway. About Marcus's hatred. About the very real possibility that she wouldn't survive the next challenge. "Because if I don't, nothing changes," she said. "And I'm tired of nothing changing." Mira squeezed her hand. "You know you're a complete lunatic, right?" "Yeah." "Good. Just checking." They returned to the palace in a convoy. 3 vehicles full of Omegas who'd decided to fight back. Kael had arranged rooms for all of them in the palace's guest wing, with guards stationed outside each door. "Marcus will hear about this," he said as they watched the Omegas settle in. He'll know we're preparing counter-testimony. Let him know, Lena said. Maybe it'll make him nervous. Or more dangerous. He's already trying to kill me. How much more dangerous can he get? Kale didn't answer, which was answer enough. The next council session was called for 3 days later. Not a challenge this time. Kyle had invoked his right as Alpha King to call an emergency session on Omega welfare policy. Marcus couldn't refuse without looking like he didn't care about Omega welfare. Which, of course, he didn't. But he had to pretend. The night before the session, Lena met with each of the 13 Omegas individually, helped them prepare their testimonies, warned them what to expect. They'll try to break you, she said to Tessa, who was the youngest and most fragile looking. They'll ask invasive questions, demand proof, try to make you doubt your own memories. What do I do? Tell the truth. Simple, clear. Don't elaborate unless they ask. Don't defend yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. Just tell what happened. Tessa nodded, pale but determined. Lena went through the same conversation 12 more times. By the end, she was exhausted, drained from reliving trauma vicariously, from preparing people to be re-traumatized for political gain. She found Kyle in his study, still working. Is this wrong? She asked without preamble. What we're doing? Using their stories like this? Are we using them, or are we giving them a voice? Both, Lena said. It can be both. Then we make sure the voice part matters more than the using part. Kyle set down his work. We protect them. We give them support. We make sure they know they can stop at any point, and we use what they're willing to give us to burn down the system that hurt them. And if it's not enough, if the council dismisses them anyway, then at least we tried. At least they got to speak. He paused. That has value, Lena. Even if it doesn't change the law, it changes them, gives them power over their own narratives. Lena wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. What if I'm making it worse? She whispered. What if all I'm doing is putting a target on their backs? Kyle stood, crossed to where she sat, crouched down so they were eye level. You're not making it worse, he said. You're making it visible. There's a difference. The council session started at noon. The chamber was packed again. Apparently word had spread that something significant was happening. Nobles, officials, press representatives, even some Omegas in the gallery, watching with hungry eyes. The 7 council members took their seats. Marcus looked confident, almost smug. He had no idea what was coming. Kyle stood. This session is called to address ongoing concerns about Omega welfare across the territories. We will hear testimony from affected parties. This is highly irregular, Marcus objected. Council sessions are for legal debate, not personal anecdotes. And yet you were planning to bring Omega witnesses to your challenge next week, Kyle said mildly. I'm simply moving up the timeline. Marcus's expression flickered. Caught. Bring in the first witness, Kyle said. Mira entered the chamber. She looked small in the massive space, dwarfed by the council thrones and the watching crowd. But she walked to the center with her head up, and when she spoke, her voice was clear. My name is Mira Chen. I'm 23 years old. For the past 5 years, I've been bonded to Alpha Derek Chen of the Western Territories. The bond was arranged when I was 18. I didn't consent. My pack made the decision for me. According to territorial law, that was legal. She paused. Alpha Derek has broken my arm twice, fractured my ribs once, given me more bruises and cuts than I can count. When I tried to leave, the law said I couldn't. Omegas can't dissolve bonds without Alpha consent, and Derek will never consent. Silence. So I ran, Mira continued, left everything, became a fugitive, because staying meant dying, and the law offered no other option. Marcus leaned forward. Do you have proof of these alleged injuries? Medical records from the PAC clinic. I can provide them. And did you file formal complaints? With who? Mira asked. The PAC leadership? They're Derek's cousins, territorial authorities. They told me it was a private bond matter. The law protects him, counselor, not me. One by one, the other Omegas testified. Tessa described being sold like property. Marcus the male Omega described forced sterilization attempts. Others detailed abuse, exploitation, violations that were legal under current law. The council tried to dismiss them, tried to find holes in their stories. But there were too many, from too many different territories, with too much consistency. By the time the 13th Omega finished, the chamber was silent. Even Marcus looked shaken. Alpha Chen, the progressive counselor, spoke first. These testimonies paint a disturbing picture of systemic failure. Not isolated incidents, but patterns repeated across multiple territories. They're self-selected, Marcus argued, recovering. Of course, Omegas who volunteer to testify against the system will have negative experiences. That doesn't mean the system itself is broken. Then where are the Omegas with positive experiences? Lena asked, standing from her seat. You said you were bringing them to your challenge next week. Where are they? Marcus's jaw tightened. This isn't your session to speak in, Omega. My name is Lena, and I'm speaking anyway. She looked at the gallery, at the Omegas watching from above. If the system works, if it protects and provides, why aren't they here defending it? Why is it only us, the broken ones, the escapees, the survivors, who are willing to speak? Silence. Then, from the gallery, an Omega stood. Because we're afraid, she said, her voice shaking. Because speaking against the system means risking everything. But she's right. She gestured to Lena. Someone had to say it. Someone had to stop being afraid. Another Omega stood. Then another. Within moments, half the gallery was on their feet. I was beaten by my alpha, one called out. I was sold to pay pact debts, another added. I watched my sister die because the law wouldn't let her leave an abusive bond. The voices multiplied, overlapping, creating a wave of testimony that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Marcus slammed his hand down. Order! This chamber will have order! But the voices didn't stop. Kale looked at Lena, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. This was it. The moment everything shifted. Let them speak, Kale said quietly. This is chaos, Marcus protested. No, Gareth said, standing from his throne. This is truth, and we've been ignoring it for too long. He looked at the other council members. I move to suspend current proceedings and open an immediate inquiry into Omega welfare policy across all territories. Full investigation, public hearings, transparent review. Seconded, Alpha Chen said immediately. This is premature, Marcus argued. We haven't heard counter-testimony. We've heard enough, Gareth interrupted. Vote, now. The vote was 5-2. Only Marcus and Devin voted against. The gallery erupted in cheers. Lena felt her knees go weak, felt the weight of the past weeks pressing down and suddenly, impossibly, lifting. They'd done it. Not victory, not yet, but the first real crack in the system. Kale caught her eye across the chamber, nodded once. Then the doors burst open. Palace guards rushed in, looking panicked. Alpha King, the lead guard said urgently. We have a situation. There's been an attack. Where? The guest wing, where the Omega witnesses are housed. Lena's blood went cold. How many casualties? Kale demanded. 2 injured, 1. The guard hesitated. 1 missing. Who? The guard looked at Lena. Mira Chen, he said. The world tilted. Lena was moving before she thought, running from the chamber, Kyle shouting behind her. She ran through hallways, upstairs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The guest wing was chaos. Guards everywhere. Omegas huddled together, crying, blood on the floor. Lena found Tessa, who had a cut across her forehead and terror in her eyes. What happened? Lena demanded. They came through the window, Tessa sobbed. Masked. 4 of them. They grabbed Mira and 2 others, but the guards came and they had to leave the others behind. They took Mira. They just took her. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. This was her fault. She'd brought Mira here. She'd put her in danger. Kale arrived, breathing hard, took in the scene with cold fury. Lock down the palace, he ordered. No one leaves. Search every room. Find her. They'll have taken her outside the palace by now, one of the guards said. Then expand the search to the whole city. Kale's voice was deadly quiet. I want her found. Now. He pulled Lena aside. This was Marcus, he said. You don't know that? Who else would be threatened enough by today's testimony to act this fast? His eyes were hard. He's sending a message, trying to scare the other Omegas into silence. It's working, Lena said, looking at Tessa's terrified face. They're terrified. Then we show them fear doesn't win. Kael gripped her shoulders. We find Mira, we bring her back, and we make whoever did this regret it. And if we can't find her? Kael's expression went dark. We will. But the hours passed with no leads. The search expanded across the central lands. Every resource the palace had was dedicated to finding one missing Omega. And Lena stood in her room in Kael's wing, staring at her phone at the last message from Mira. Mira, we're going to win this. Mira, I can feel it. She'd been so sure, so hopeful. And Lena had let her down. A knock on the door. Kael entered, his face grim. We found something, he said. A witness saw a vehicle leaving the palace grounds around the time of the attack, heading toward the industrial district. The shelter, Lena said immediately. They took her back to the shelter. Why would they? Because that's where Omegas disappear and no one notices. Lena was already moving. It's the perfect place to hide someone. Or worse. Kael didn't argue, just followed. They took a full security team this time. Armored vehicles, armed guards, no subtlety. Building 47 looked abandoned when they arrived, dark, silent. The guards went in first, came back shaking their heads. Empty. Check again, Lena demanded. She has to be here. She pushed past them into the shelter. It was dark inside, quiet. The makeshift beds were empty, but there was fresh blood on the floor. Lena followed it, through the main room, down a hallway she hadn't noticed before, to a door marked storage. She opened it. Mira was inside, tied to a chair, unconscious but breathing, blood on her face from a head wound but alive. Alive. Medic! Kael shouted. Now! Guards flooded the room. Someone cut Mira's bonds. Someone else started treating her injuries. Lena knelt beside her, took her hand. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. Mira's eyes flickered open, focused on Lena's face. Did we win? She asked, her voice barely audible. Lena felt tears on her face. Yeah, we won. Mira smiled, then passed out again. The medics took over, loaded her into the transport, rushed her back to the palace medical wing. Kael and Lena followed. This was a warning, Kael said in the vehicle. Marcus knew we'd find her. That's why they left her alive. He wanted to send a message. What message? That he can get to anyone. That no one who helps you is safe. Kael's hands were fists. He's escalating. Then so do we, Lena said, and her voice was cold now, hard. No more playing defense. No more waiting for him to make moves. We go after him. How? Lena thought about Marcus's smug confidence, about the way he'd dismissed every testimony, about the system he'd spent decades protecting. We make him face the one thing he can't dismiss, she said. We make him face me, directly, publicly. No lawyers, no procedure, no hiding behind council rules, just him and me and the truth. He'll never agree to that. Then we make it a formal challenge. I challenge him. For his council seat. Kael stared at her. That's not possible. Omegas can't hold council positions. According to what law? According to Sat. He stopped, pulled out his tablet, started searching through legal documents. His expression shifted. There's no explicit law prohibiting it. It's just never been done. Then it's time someone did it. Lena met his eyes. I challenge Marcus Stone for his seat on the Territorial Council, and I dare him to refuse. Kael's smile was sharp, dangerous. That, he said, is either brilliant or insane. Can it be both? With you? Probably. He started making calls, setting it up, making it official. By morning, the challenge would be public, and Marcus would have to answer. The announcement went public at dawn. Formal challenge issued by Lena Vire, Omega mate of the Alpha King, for the Central Territories Council seat, currently held by Alpha Marcus Stone. The challenge would be settled through traditional means, public debate, followed by a territorial vote. The news spread like wildfire. By mid-morning, every major outlet was covering it. Social media exploded. The palace was flooded with requests for comment, for interviews, for access to what everyone was calling the most significant political challenge in territorial history. Lena watched the chaos unfold from Kael's study, her hands wrapped around coffee she couldn't drink. He hasn't responded yet, Vera said, scrolling through updates on her tablet. Radio silence from Marcus's office. He's trying to figure out how to refuse without looking like a coward, Kael said. He was at his desk, working through legal precedents. The challenge is legitimate. Unprecedented, but legitimate. If he refuses, he's admitting an Omega scares him. And if he accepts, then he thinks he can destroy you publicly. Kael looked up. Which he probably can. You have no political experience, no formal education, no standing in territorial governance. On paper, this is suicide. Good thing we're not fighting on paper, Lena said. A knock on the door. One of Kael's assistants entered, looking flustered. Alpha King, Marcus Stone is here. He's demanding an immediate meeting. Kael and Lena exchanged glances. Show him in, Kael said. Marcus entered like a storm. His face was flushed, his movements tight with barely controlled rage. He ignored Lena completely, focused on Kael. Call off this farce, he demanded. Now! It's not my challenge to call off, Kael said mildly. Lena issued it. You'll have to take it up with her. Marcus finally looked at Lena. The contempt in his eyes was so raw it was almost physical. You think you can take my seat? He said, his voice low and dangerous. You think some Omega who's been here a month can challenge a counselor who's served for 20 years? I think the system you've protected for 20 years is broken, Lena replied, keeping her voice steady. I think you've spent 2 decades enabling abuse and calling it law. And I think it's time someone stopped you. You have no idea what you're doing. The council seat requires knowledge of territorial law, governance structure, economic policy, diplomatic relations. It requires giving a damn about the people you're supposed to serve, Lena interrupted. And you've proven you don't. So yes, I'm challenging you. And yes, I'm going to win. Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound. You're delusional. The territorial vote will never support an Omega counselor. Even if, somehow, you manage to win the debate, the people won't vote for you. Then you have nothing to worry about, Lena said. Accept the challenge. Prove I'm delusional. Should be easy for someone with 20 years of experience. Marcus's expression went cold. You want a public debate? Fine. But when I'm done with you, when I've exposed every gap in your knowledge, every failure of logic, every reason you're unqualified, don't expect mercy. I'm not asking for mercy, Lena said. I'm asking for truth. You'll get it. Marcus turned to Kael. I accept the challenge. 1 week from today, full territorial broadcast. No restrictions on topics or questioning. Agreed, Kael said. Marcus looked at Lena one more time. I'm going to enjoy this. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. Silence filled the study. Well, Vera said finally, that went better than expected. He thinks he's already won, Lena said. He probably has, Vera replied bluntly. Lena, he's right about the knowledge gap. He can cite law, precedent, policy details you've never heard of. He can make you look incompetent without breaking a sweat. Then we don't fight on his terms, Kael said. He was writing something, his expression focused. We make this about what you know that he doesn't. Direct experience, human cost, the gap between law and justice. That won't be enough, Vera argued. He'll just dismiss it as emotional manipulation. Let him, Lena said. Let him stand up there and say that Omega suffering doesn't matter because it's not in the law books. Let him prove exactly what kind of counselor he is. Vera looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we still need to prep you on basic governance. If he asks you a direct question about territorial policy and you can't answer, you lose credibility. Then teach me, Lena said. We have a week. Let's use it. The week that followed was brutal. Vera drilled her on territorial structure, council procedures, economic basics. Kael walked her through diplomatic protocols, alliance frameworks, political theory. They worked 18-hour days, Lena's brain absorbing information so fast it felt like drowning. But she learned. Not everything, not even close, but enough to hold her own if Marcus tried to trap her with procedural questions. The night before the debate, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat in Kael's study reviewing notes for the 100th time when he found her. You should rest, he said. Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see tomorrow. Kael sat down across from her. Nervous? Terrified? Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He paused. Can I tell you something? Yeah. When I first chose you for this, when I made that offer in the throne room, I thought I was using you. A political tool to force change. I told myself it was strategic, calculated. Lena looked up at him. But watching you these past weeks, Kael continued, watching you stand in front of the council, watching you bring those Omegas together, watching you challenge Marcus when everyone said it was impossible. He met her eyes. You're not a tool, you're a force, and I'm grateful you said yes. Something shifted in Lena's chest, something warm and complicated and dangerous. Are we still pretending this is just political? She asked quietly. Kael's expression flickered. I don't know. Are we? The moment stretched between them, charged, fragile. Then Lena's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. Message from Mira, who was still recovering in the medical wing. Mira, kick his ass tomorrow. Mira, all of us are watching Mira. Don't you dare lose. Lena smiled, showed Kael the message. No pressure, he said dryly. Just the entire Omega population of the territories watching to see if I can prove we're worth protecting. No big deal. You know you've already proven that, right? Regardless of what happens tomorrow? Have I? Lena set down her phone. Because if I lose, if Marcus destroys me up there, what does that prove? That Omegas can't handle leadership? That the system was right all along? It proves you tried, Kael said firmly. That you fought when everyone said you'd lose. That matters, Lena. Win or lose, that matters. She wanted to believe him. Tomorrow, she'd find out if she could. The debate was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, the largest public space in the Central Lands. Capacity, 5,000. Every seat was filled. Overflow crowds gathered outside, watching on screens. The entire territories tuned in via broadcast. Lena had never seen so many people in one place. She stood backstage, wearing formal council attire. Vera had insisted, said it would help her look legitimate, and tried to remember how to breathe. You ready? Kael asked. He'd wanted to be with her until the last moment. No. Good answer. He squeezed her hand. Remember, he'll try to make you angry. Don't take the bait. Stay calm. Stay clear. Tell the truth. What if the truth isn't enough? Then we tried anyway. An official appeared. 5 minutes. Kael pulled Lena into a quick, fierce hug. You've got this. Then she was alone. The walk from backstage to the debate platform felt like walking to an execution. Every step echoed. Every face in the crowd watched, judged. Marcus was already at his podium, looking confident and composed, like this was just another Tuesday. Lena took her place at the opposite podium. The moderator, a neutral official from the Eastern Territories, stepped forward. This debate will determine the Central Territories Council seat. 2 hours. Open format. Candidates may question each other directly. Territorial vote will follow immediately after. He looked at both of them. Councillor Stone, as the incumbent, you have the first statement. Marcus smiled. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing today is unprecedented. An Omega with no qualifications, no experience, no understanding of governance, challenging a sitting councillor. It would be amusing if it weren't so dangerous. He turned to face Lena. Miss Vire represents a trend I've watched with concern. The idea that passion can replace competence, that emotion can substitute for knowledge, that simply being oppressed qualifies someone to lead. He paused for effect. It doesn't. Leadership requires education, experience, wisdom, things that take years to develop. This challenge is not about reform or justice. It's about ego, about someone who wants power without earning it. The crowd murmured, some in agreement. Lena felt her pulse spike, felt the familiar shame trying to claw its way up. Then she remembered Mira's message, remembered the 13 Omegas who'd testified, remembered 4 years of scrubbing floors while people like Marcus decided her worth. The moderator gestured to her. Miss Vire, your opening statement. Lena stepped closer to the microphone. Councillor Stone is right about one thing, she said. I don't have his qualifications. I haven't spent 20 years in governance. I don't have advanced degrees in policy or law. She met his eyes. What I have is 4 years of living under the system he's protected. 4 years of being crushed by laws he's defended. 4 years of watching the gap between legal and just get wider, while he did nothing. She turned to face the crowd. He says leadership requires wisdom. I agree. But what wisdom has he shown? What problems has he solved? In 20 years on the council, what has he done to address Omega suffering, beta exploitation, the structural violence built into our laws? She let the question hang. Nothing. Because to him, those aren't problems. They're features. The system works exactly as he wants it to, protecting alpha privilege while crushing everyone else. And he calls that wisdom. The crowd's murmur changed tone. Engaged now. Listening. So yes, Lena continued, I'm unqualified by his standards. But his standards are the problem. Maybe what we need isn't more of the same expertise that built this broken system. Maybe we need someone who's actually lived in it. Applause erupted from parts of the crowd. Not everyone, but enough. Marcus's smile had gone tight. The moderator intervened. Counselor Stone, you may respond or pose a question. Question, Marcus said immediately. Miss Vire, can you explain the territorial tax structure and how it funds council operations? Lena's stomach dropped. This was the trap Vera had warned about. Technical questions designed to expose her ignorance. No, she said simply. Marcus blinked. No, I can't explain the tax structure in detail. I've never worked in territorial finance. But I can tell you this, whatever that structure is, it's failing. We have Omegas living in shelters, children going hungry, packs struggling while the central lands prosper. So either you don't understand the tax structure yourself, or you understand it and don't care that it's not working. She leaned forward. Which is it, counselor? Marcus's expression hardened. The tax structure is balanced and efficient. If some regions struggle, that's due to local mismanagement, not central policy. Convenient, Lena said. Blame the victims while protecting the system. That's not... Then explain the Omega welfare gap. Why do Omegas have higher poverty rates, lower life expectancy, worse health outcomes across every territory? Is that local mismanagement too? Those statistics are complicated. No, they're not, Lena interrupted. They're simple. The system treats Omegas as less valuable, funds alpha programs over Omega welfare, protects alpha rights while denying Omega autonomy. That's not complicated. That's policy. Your policy. Marcus slammed his hand on the podium. You're oversimplifying complex issues, or you're overcomplicating simple injustice to avoid addressing it. The crowd was fully engaged now. Reactions split. Some cheering, some booing, everyone riveted. The moderator tried to regain control. Miss Vire, Counselor Stone's turn to question, but Marcus had lost his composure. You want to talk about injustice? Fine. Let's talk about the Omegas you brought to testify. The ones with sad stories designed to manipulate emotion. Did you tell them you were using them as political props? I told them the truth, Lena said, that speaking up was dangerous, that the system would fight back, that they might not change anything, and they chose to speak anyway because living in silence was worse. How noble, Marcus sneered. And when one of them was kidnapped from the palace, your friend, wasn't it? Did your noble cause feel worth it then? The hall went silent. Lena felt the hit, felt the guilt she'd been carrying since Mira's attack. No, she said quietly. It didn't feel worth it. It felt like I'd failed her, like I'd put her in danger for nothing. Marcus smiled, thinking he'd won. But then I visited her in the medical wing, Lena continued, her voice strengthening. And you know what she said? She said she'd do it again. She said being kidnapped and beaten was still better than spending another day silent. Because at least now people know, people see. The system can't hide its violence anymore. She looked directly at Marcus. You had her kidnapped, didn't you? You or someone you're protecting. You took her to scare the others into silence, to punish me for speaking up. And you think that proves I'm wrong to challenge you. I had nothing to do with... Prove it, Lena demanded. Open investigation, full transparency. Let's find out who ordered that attack and who they're connected to. Marcus's face had gone pale. You can't just accuse a counselor without evidence. I'm not accusing. I'm asking for truth. Isn't that what you want? Truth over emotion? The moderator stepped in. This is beyond the scope of... No, it's not, Lena said. This is exactly the scope. He's asking if I'm qualified to lead. I'm asking if he's qualified to be trusted. Those are the same question. She turned back to the crowd. For 20 years, Counselor Stone has made decisions that hurt people. He's hidden behind law and procedure and expertise while Omega's died. And when someone finally called him out, his response was violence, kidnapping, threats. That's defamation, Marcus sputtered. Then sue me. Let's have that investigation. Let's pull all the records from the night Mira was taken. Let's see who benefits from keeping Omegas silent. Marcus looked trapped, cornered. Gareth stood up from his seat in the audience. I second the call for investigation. Then Alpha Chen stood. Third? One by one, council members rose. Not all of them, but enough. The moderator looked panicked. This is highly irregular. So is an Omega challenging for a council seat, Lena said. We're in irregular territory, might as well embrace it. Marcus was losing control. She could see it in his face, in the way his hands shook, in the desperation creeping into his voice. You can't win, he said. Even if you discredit me, the vote will never support an Omega counselor. The people won't. Let them decide, Lena interrupted. Stop telling them what they will or won't do. Let them vote. Let them choose whether they want more of you or something different. She stepped back from her podium, walked to the center of the stage. I'm not asking anyone to vote for me because I'm qualified by traditional standards. I'm not. I'm asking you to vote for what kind of territories we want to be. One where expertise matters more than empathy, where law matters more than justice, where maintaining order is more important than protecting people. She looked out at the crowd. Thousands of faces, thousands of choices. Or do we want territories where lived experience counts as knowledge, where suffering can't be dismissed as emotion, where the people most hurt by the system get a voice in changing it? She spread her hands. I can't promise I'll be a perfect counselor. I'll make mistakes. I'll have a lot to learn. But I promise I'll never forget what it's like to be powerless. I'll never dismiss someone's pain as inconvenient. I'll never protect a system that destroys people. She looked at Marcus. Can you promise the same? Marcus said nothing. The silence stretched. Then someone in the crowd started clapping, an Omega in the back row. Then another, and another. Within seconds, half the hall was on their feet, applauding. Not everyone. The crowd was still divided, but the sound was deafening. The moderator had to call for order 3 times before the noise died down enough for him to speak. The debate period is concluded. Territorial vote will now proceed. Results in 1 hour. Lena walked off stage on shaking legs. Kael was there immediately, pulling her into the wings. That was, he started. Reckless. I know. I was going to say magnificent. He was smiling, actually smiling. You destroyed him. I don't know if it's enough. It's enough. Look. He showed her his phone. Social media was exploding. Polls were shifting in real time. The momentum had changed. It wasn't a sure thing, but it wasn't impossible anymore. They waited in a private room while the vote was tallied. Kael, Vire, and Lena. None of them could sit still. Mira appeared, supported by a nurse but insisting on being there. You came, Lena said. You think I'd miss this? Mira hugged her carefully, mindful of her still healing injuries. You were perfect up there. I don't know if perfect wins elections. Then we'll find out together. The hour felt like days. Finally, an official entered. The votes are counted. They're ready to announce. They walked back to the main hall together. The crowd had stayed. All 5,000 of them, waiting. The moderator stood at the podium with the results. Territorial vote for Central Territories Council seat, he announced. Marcus Stone, 42%. Lena Vire, 51%. Abstentions, 7%. The hall erupted. Lena couldn't process it, couldn't make the numbers make sense. You won, Kael said, his voice full of something she'd never heard before. Lena, you won. She'd won. And Omega had just won a council seat. The crowd was going insane, half cheering, half protesting, all of them loud. Security had to form a barrier around Lena as people pressed forward, some to congratulate, some to object, all of them wanting to touch history. Marcus stood frozen at his podium, looking old suddenly, defeated. Gareth approached him, said something Lena couldn't hear. Marcus shook his head, then turned and walked out of the hall. No speech, no concession, just gone. Lena was sworn in that night. Emergency session. Unprecedented. But nothing about this was precedented. She stood in front of the 6 remaining council members, her council members now, and took the oath. I, Lena Vire, do solemnly swear to serve the Central Territories with integrity, wisdom, and dedication to justice for all. Her voice didn't shake. When it was done, when she took her seat, Marcus's seat, her seat now, the reality finally hit. She'd done it, changed everything. The council session that followed was brief. Gareth moved to open formal investigations into Omega welfare, forced bonding laws, and the attack on Mira. The votes passed 6-0. Even the councillors who'd opposed Lena couldn't vote against investigations without looking guilty. Progress. Real, measurable progress. Afterward, Lena found herself back in Kael's study. Her study now too, technically. Everything had changed. How does it feel? Kael asked. Lena thought about it. About the scared girl who'd scrubbed floors 4 months ago. About the woman who'd accidentally texted the Alpha King. About everything that had happened between then and now. Terrifying, she admitted. I have no idea what I'm doing. You'll learn, same as you learned everything else. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good at this? Then you'll mess up and learn and do better next time. Kael moved closer. Lena, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. She looked up at him, at this man who'd offered her a choice that night in the throne room, who'd stood by her through challenges and attacks and impossible odds. The bonding, she said, the political arrangement, is that still what this is? Kael's expression shifted, vulnerable suddenly, uncertain. I don't know, he said honestly. What do you want it to be? Lena thought about that, about strategy and survival and the difference between necessity and choice. I want it to be real, she said quietly, not political. Not calculated. Real. So do I, Kael admitted. I have for a while now. I just didn't know if you... She kissed him. It was messy and unpracticed, and nothing like the strategic alliance they'd started with. It was real. When they broke apart, Kael was smiling. So, he said, revolution and romance? Why not? Lena asked. We've already done the impossible. Might as well go for broke. 3 months later, the first Omega rights legislation passed the full territorial council. Not everything Lena wanted, compromises had to be made. But it was a start. Property rights for Omegas, legal protections against forced bonding, access to education and professional positions, basic autonomy enshrined in law. It wasn't perfect, but it was change, real, lasting change. Lena stood in the council chamber after the vote, looking at the 6 other councillors. Some had become allies, some were still resistant. All of them had learned to take her seriously. First law passed, Gareth said, approaching her after the session. How's it feel? Like we've barely started, Lena admitted. Good. That means you're paying attention. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you won. The council needed someone who remembers what it's like to be powerless. I'll try not to forget. You won't. That's not who you are. She hoped he was right. That evening, she visited the shelter in the industrial district, the one where she'd found Mira. It was different now. Funded by the new Omega welfare program, properly staffed, safe. Mira worked there, helping other displaced Omegas find their footing. You don't have to do this, Lena had told her months ago. You could work at the palace. Better pay, better conditions. I know, Mira had said, but someone needs to be here. Someone who understands. Might as well be me. Lena found her now in the common room, surrounded by newly arrived Omegas, explaining their rights under the new laws. And you can own property now, Mira was saying. Actually own it. In your name. They can't take it without cause. One of the Omegas started crying, happy tears. Mira saw Lena, smiled. Councillor Vire, to what do we owe the honor? Just checking in, making sure the new programs are working. They are. We're actually helping people instead of just warehousing them. Mira stood, hugged her. Thank you for all of this. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. That counts. Lena stayed for an hour, listening to stories, learning what was working and what still needed fixing, taking mental notes for the next council session. This was the work now. Not dramatic debates or legal challenges, just steady, persistent effort to make things better. It was exhausting. It was worth it. She returned to the palace as the sun set, found Kael in their shared quarters. They'd stopped pretending to maintain separate spaces months ago. He was reading through proposals for the next legislative session. Find anything good? Lena asked. Gareth wants to tackle beta labor rights next. Chen is pushing for environmental protections. You'll hate this, but Thomas submitted a proposal to expand trade routes. What's wrong with trade routes? Nothing, except he structured it to benefit coastal packs over inland ones. Classic Thomas. Lena groaned. So we'll have to negotiate. Welcome to governance. Kael set down the papers. How was the shelter? Good. The programs are working, but we need more funding. Add it to the budget proposal. We'll fight for it. They would. It would be hard. It wouldn't fix everything, but it would help. That's all they could do. Help. One law, one policy, one person at a time. Later, lying in bed, Lena stared at the ceiling and thought about how far she'd come. From Omega servant to counselor. From invisible to unavoidable. From survival to legacy. What are you thinking? Kael asked. That 4 months ago I was scrubbing floors, now I'm writing laws. Regret it? No, it's just surreal. You earned it, every bit of it. Did I? Lena turned to face him. Or did I just get lucky? Right place, right time, right message. Luck gave you the opportunity. You did the rest. He brushed hair from her face. And you're still doing it. That's what matters. She wanted to believe that, wanted to think she deserved this position, this power, this chance to change things. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. Either way, she was going to use it. I love you, she said. The words still felt new, strange, but true. I love you too, Kael replied. My revolutionary counselor queen. That's not my title. It should be. She laughed, kissed him. Felt, for the first time in her life, safe enough to imagine a future where Omegas weren't crushed, where the system protected instead of exploited, where power served justice instead of itself. It wouldn't happen overnight, might not happen in her lifetime, but it would happen because she wasn't the only one fighting anymore. The 13 Omegas who testified had become activists. Mira was building networks. Gareth was pushing reforms from inside the council. Chen was organizing. Kael was using his authority to force change. A movement had started. And Lena, the Omega who'd accidentally texted the Alpha King, who'd refused to kneel, who'd chosen revolution over survival, was at the center of it. Not because she was perfect, not because she had all the answers, but because she'd been willing to try. And sometimes that was enough. The territories would never be the same. The system that had crushed so many was finally starting to crack. Laws were changing. Rights were expanding. Power was shifting. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still battles to fight, still enemies to face, still work that would take years. But for the first time, that work felt possible. And Lena Vire, who'd spent 4 years invisible, was now impossible to ignore. The Omega who'd scrubbed floors had rewritten destiny. Not just her own, everyone's. And she was just getting started.